All right, folks, it's gone 6 o'clock, so we will get the meeting underway. Welcome to the ordinary meeting of Council for the 23rd of October. Nala Kadich Wajak Mort Kayan Kadak Nija Walilap Buja, Wejinang Wajak Kadajan, Wen Yiting Bula Yeah. We acknowledge the Wajak people as the traditional owners of the Greater Fremantle Walilap area, and we recognise that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. The meeting is being recorded and streamed live online. While all care is taken to maintain privacy, visitors in the public gallery and members of the public submitting a question might be captured in the recording. Attendance, apologies and leaves of absence. Councillor Williamson Wong is running a little bit late. I think everyone else is here. Councillor Van Dawson has requested a leave of absence from the 1st of Feb to the 23rd of Feb, 2025. And that's moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Sullivan. All those in favour? Do we have any other requests for leaves of absence? No? Excellent. Are there any disclosures of interest by members in relation to tonight's agenda? Nope. All right. There were no public questions taken on notice at the previous ordinary meeting with Council, so that takes us to public question time. For those of you who have been here before, you'll know that there's 3 minutes up at the microphone, and there'll be a little chime sound when you get close to the end of those 3 minutes, encouraging you to wind up. And I will call you up in the order of the sign-in sheet that we've received. And if you can state your name at the beginning, that's always good. I usually read it correctly, but sometimes not so much. All right. So first up, we've got Damien Stevens on Fremantle Oval Master Plan. So that item not on the agenda.
Thank you. Kai, everyone, and members of the Ordinary Council. I'm a resident of Freo and have been for over 10 years. I've previously spoken at Council regarding dangerous behaviour from DOC on Bellevue Terrace. Today I'm addressing the Fremantle Oval Master Plan. I support the majority of the plan, but I'm specifically rejecting the proposal to include more public housing. Let me just state that I've spent time volunteering with refugees, have raised over $6,000 for homelessness, and have traditionally been a Labor voter my whole life. However, living across the road from a DOC complex, I've witnessed unacceptable and frightening things, and my attitude has shifted. This includes threats, violence, abuse in the form of suicide attempts, deaths, drug deals, drug-related violence, physical assaults on neighbours, and used syringes in our yards. Just 2 days ago, my wife and 2-year-old daughter were followed home and threatened in front of our home, and this is why I'm speaking to you this evening. I'd much rather be at dinner, bath and bedtime. The residents of Fremantle have been subjected to the highest rate rises in WA across the last 3 years, and yet as a council we have the highest percentage of public housing where residents are forced to endure dangerous, illegal and antisocial behaviour as a result of the total mismanagement of DOC premises in the city of Fremantle by the DOC. The council is meant to represent the interests of our ratepayers, but has ignored concerns raised by residents who attended community forums in relation to the Freo Oval Master Plan, specifically the addition of more public housing, which was reported by the West Australian. I'm raising these concerns again, loud and clear. I've lived negative experience with DOC housing in Fremantle, and the vast majority of my street rejects the addition of more public housing. There's about 70 of them in the city of Fremantle. In the Perth Now article on the 11th of October, you mentioned that people want to deny the folks who gave us the vibrancy in Freo to live with. I'm offended by this statement because it sounds like, because of my beliefs, I'm denying people the right to live. I implore you to do some due diligence and speak to people who actually live next door to DOC housing. They won't speak of designers, artists or creatives. They will tell you about drug deals, criminals, domestic and family violence perpetrators, and individuals who regularly break the law. They don't bring vibrancy or culture or the energy you reference, but rather detract from the basic human rights that we should be afforded living in Fremantle. I would suggest as a council your focus should be on attracting people to Fremantle to add to its culture, not to make people scared to leave their homes. We should be attracting people to contribute financially, which may help address the myriad of empty shops for lease in our city centre. Unfortunately, I know firsthand that DOC, which is my issue here, their management is incapable of managing dangerous and disruptive behaviours at their properties. A quick example, a known drug dealer and criminal was subletting to two people for over a month, and their response was that they would send a letter when I was threatened with a brick. Until the DOC actually update and change their policies and properly screen tenants, manage dangerous behaviour, and offer adequate support to tenants and the broader community, you need to stop taking more DOC housing. Send a clear message to DOC by saying no. By saying yes to more and more public housing, you're telling them how they operate is acceptable, but it is not.
Thank you, Damien. I might just get a response in terms of the Fremantle Oval Master Plan and intentions in it in terms of housing from the Director of Planning. To clarify, it's not a question of public housing, but I'm sure the Director can talk to that.
Thank you, Mayor, through the Chair. At this point in time, there is no clarity as to what percentage of housing, if we do ever build housing at the Oval, would be social or affordable, whether it would be built for rent or such like. What I would suggest is any comments to be made on the Oval are put through our website, on the MySay website, which is open, I believe, for another 2 weeks. So I would encourage you to get on and leave your comments there.
Thank you. Okay. Louis de Villiers?
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Madam Mayor, I've got two separate issues, so I'm just wondering, are we dealing with them as two separate items?
If you want to use your 3 minutes to cover both of the issues, that's fine, and I'll get responses on them afterwards.
Yep.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks. Yeah, the first issue is the issue of AUKUS, which has really concerned me from the very, very outset. When this was jumped on the country by Scott Morrison, I was horrified. I had no doubt that when the Albanese government came into power, the first thing it would do would be to get rid of this nonsense. On the contrary, we seem to be simply gleefully going ahead with this. And Fremantle is having this foisted on it with all kinds of repercussions, which we don't know what they may be. And there's been no attempt to inform the public or offer the public any opportunity to discuss these concerns or see how they may be addressed. In my view, the council should have said, no, we're not having this, that's it. I know it's not that easy, but that's what I think our council should have been saying. So I've got two questions relating to that. The first is about the trip, the US AUKUS trip by the Perth Southwest Metro Alliance. When will the city and its ratepayers, who indirectly helped finance the mayor and her CEO's recent AUKUS trip to the USA, receive a report back on the claimed benefits and outcomes, including what was learnt about the much-touted emergency nuclear safety measures? I believe this trip cost in the order of 14,000 something per individual. It's a lot of money, and obviously it's something that the ratepayers are actually paying. Secondly, the Australian Naval Nuclear Power Safety Bill was recently rammed through the Senate without debate. It will see the new regulator answerable to the Minister of Defence rather than the Minister of Health. The city supported this bill via the Perth Southwest Metro Alliance's submission made on behalf of the relevant member councils, including the City of Fremantle. So the question is whether the city still supports our community naval nuclear safety being in the hands of the Defence Minister, and if so, why? And if not, why has the city not spoken up for our community and raised these concerns with APANSA and Defence? So that's on that item. I can continue on the second item if you wish. Yep. So on that, I had a phone call from one of our neighbours this morning who was walking through Buyimbra Park as she does in the morning with her dog, and was horrified to find one of the ficuses being lopped or chopped down. So there's been concern about shot-hole borer infestation of trees in Fremantle, and currently the only solution from DPIRD monitoring the infestation appears to be the removal of trees identified as being infected. Communication by council to its community about actions to be undertaken seems to be lacking. This morning we were alerted by a neighbour walking a dog through Buimbra that tree loppers were engaged in chopping down one of the ficus trees at the northern side of the picnic area adjacent to the children's play area. It appeared the loppers were identifying neighbouring trees also as being affected, and they will presumably proceed to chop these as well. I only managed to get there late this afternoon myself to see what has been done. So I hope to get there tomorrow and see, because I believe that work will be continuing. I'm not aware that Buimbra Friends Group received notice of this beforehand, although one of our members did track down the notice dated 18 October 2024 by Council listing such scheduled work. So the questions are, is removal of infected trees the only effective measure to counter the threat of this infestation? And secondly, do we know how effective the measures implemented thus far, including the removal of trees, are? Thirdly, are other methods of combating the threat being considered or tested? 4, if we think trees are going to have to be removed, don't we start planning and planting replacements early? Winter's just passed, and we now have to wait for next winter for another planting season.
Thank you. All right. Both questions are somewhat outside our jurisdiction. However, I'll get the CEO to respond to the first one, and I'll get the Director of Infrastructure or the Manager of Parks to respond to the second one. Thanks.
Thank you, through the Chair. The report in relation to the Perth Southwest Metropolitan Alliance delegation to the US will come through the November round of meetings. So at the moment, all the CEOs and the Director of the Perth Southwest Group are finalising that report to present to their board and then through to Council. As far as the safety bill that's just gone through the Senate, the City, through the Perth Southwest Group, did put a response in, and one of the items we raised was the governance structure around Defence looking after itself. And we actually made the comment in that report, if you read it, that we probably shouldn't have it reporting back to the Defence Minister. If that's the way that it's come through the bill, then we'll probably have to catch up with that, but we haven't actually seen the final bill at this stage.
Thank you. And on the shot-hole borer?
Thank you, through the Chair. Just in respect to your questions, the removal of trees is an adopted approach by the Department of Primary Industries and Regional Development, so we're aligned with that. The issue was brought to Council and discussed in respect to how we respond to that and how we adopt a more a quicker treatment in respect to the trees that have been identified. We would hope that there are alternative solutions and treatments that start to appear as we learn more about the nature of the infestation and how we might treat them. So we'll continue to work with the department in respect to investigating that. And the parks team have started to look at forward planning and replacement trees and are thinking about the longer term impact as well. So it is a bit of a watching brief. We are still learning and developing, but we'll try and keep everybody informed as to, in respect to progress and how we're progressing.
And there was a report to Council last Council meeting, the 9th of October. So if you want to read the minutes from the 9th of October, there's quite a comprehensive officer report to Council on the borer and our response to it. Okay, Carol Redshaw. Councillor Archibald, did you?
Sorry, yes, I was just going to ask the question whether we could in future, when trees are coming out of parks, it's quite a sensitive issue for many people, whether we could just let the friends of groups or other groups who might be working in those parks know, because then they can let others know. It might be quite helpful in terms of spreading the word. Thanks.
Noted. Thank you. Carol.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about the TAFE Beaconsfield redevelopment. And before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge that there is a housing crisis, and I do understand the need for residential development. I'm here today to implore the Council to manage these changes in a respectful way, limiting the impacts on existing residential areas. I live on Field Street. We're in line of sight of TAFE and connected to Grosvenor Street and South Street. My street has newborns to 90-year-olds. It is a street where our young kids play and ride their bikes on the road. We have widows, elderly with Alzheimer's, carers, retirees, state housing, P-platers and young adults. We are part of the community who play soccer at Bruce Lee Oval opposite TAFE, walk to the farmers markets opposite TAFE, and have kids attending Fremantle College, also opposite TAFE. And while I've actively participated in the community consultations, we feel we have been actively ignored. The main concerns voiced from my community is limiting the impact of the significant increase in vehicles, anticipated to be over 1,800 per day. When reviewing the traffic management impact assessment, I note the objectives of minimising the impact on existing residential areas. I also note the scope of the assessment is short-sighted and only addresses the roads directly touching TAFE, Lefroy, Caesar, Grosvenor Road and Badham Crescent. The assessment fails to address vehicle travel beyond this, which fails to capture the impact on the surrounding areas. The current design requires all north traffic to exit left onto Grosvenor. Now, I've repeatedly asked the council to come down at 3 p.m. when Freo College finishes and hundreds of school kids spill out across the road and onto the road, causing traffic, to attend Monday night soccer at Bruce Lee Oval with 100 parked cars and standstill traffic, to attend the Sunday morning markets where all parking bays are full and traffic spills into the surrounding streets. I'd like the council to understand how we, the community, use this area and then take this into account with your planning. I'm asking the council to change the current traffic plan to direct vehicles to Caesar Street, not Grosvenor. Caesar Street surrounds the heart of Beaconsfield redevelopment and it's an area that will soon have no existing residents. Caesar Street provides direct access to South Street and Lefroy. The current plan ensures no cars can access Caesar, only Grosvenor. This does not make sense. There's a unique opportunity to utilise this road without detrimental impacts to residential areas. This will keep our streets safe for our kids and our elderly. It will also enable the council to meet its aims identified in the traffic assessment plan. So again, I reiterate the invitation to come down and see the area and how it's actually used by the community and develop a real-world understanding of the impacts of your plans. We do not want to be negatively impacted by short-sighted planning and 800 plus vehicle trips through the streets in which we live, work and play. Please be responsive to our requests. Please be respectful to our community and please change your traffic management plan. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can assure you that a number of us have been in those same snarls, particularly on the Monday night. Okay, Corinne Perrin, you're the next speaker.
Hello, everyone. My speech will be very short. I've been a resident of Fremantle since '96. I've lived in different places, Fremantle, South Fremantle. Now I live in Beaconsfield, and I am affected too by this proposal at the TAFE site. I think more people is great. I think we can afford to have a higher density, but the development should have a design that encourages people to connect. So I would advocate for more spaces within the development, squares, benches, to allow people to be out and get to know each other. If we live in silos, in blocks, and only get out in our cars, it's not very positive, is it? So I live on Davis Street, which is an access street to Grosvenor. And I've been living here for 10 years, and over the years, we've developed a community where we know the names of everyone in the street. We support each other. If you miss some flour, you can put it on the chat. Someone will say, yes, I can give you this or that. It's really, it makes so much difference. We also have community, social housing, sorry, and had problems with some of the residents, but we addressed that altogether. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's improving. So what am I asking? I'm asking that there is more planning, again, of traffic for all these roads that go onto Grosvenor. So that is Davis Street, Curedale Street, and so that the cars can't speed to get there, and put in danger people who live there, children who play on the streets, people who ride their bikes. So that's number one. My number two is I think people should start at the council to think about shared schemes to use electric vehicles, either cars or bikes. This would be, I mean, it would not be a free service to the residents. We would need, for example, to pay for the time we use those bikes or those cars. But the service would be here and would be available. So putting docking stations at the train stations in places of high density, like the TAFE site at the beach, would allow people who visit Fremantle or people who live in Fremantle and don't want to have a car, because yes, some of us don't want to have a car, to use these when they need it. Paying for it, of course, maybe I don't know how much, but you know, registering for the service and paying for it as you use it. So that's my number two. No, I think that's it. So more mindful of the road, the traffic for these streets. Proposing a shared electric vehicle scheme and allowing for more community space within the new development.
Thank you, Corinne.
Thank you.
Okay, Ian Kerr.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to speak first about the proposed sale of Victoria Hall. And many, myself included, will welcome the news that Victoria Hall will remain in council hands, thus insulating it from the development pressures that sale to private owners would inevitably give rise to. However, this gives rise in turn to concerns about how the city will manage and fund needed repairs, maintenance and upgrading, not only for Victoria Hall, but for all the heritage properties owned by the city. A previous council resolution in 2018 to sell Victoria Hall noted that the net proceeds of the sale were to be placed in the Town Hall Conservation Reserve and the Heritage Reserve, neither of which seems to exist anymore. There will, of course, no longer be any such net proceeds, and this isn't a complaint about that. And on top of that, Victoria Hall itself will require works costing 1.16 million over the next 5 years, according to the agenda report. Not only will the historic town hall no longer get those net proceeds from sale, but on 25th of September 2024, Council reallocated $58,000 or 21% of $270,000 budgeted for town hall works. The Fremantle markets, especially the main exteriors on South Terrace and Henderson Street, are in dire need of fundamental restoration. The exterior is frankly a disgrace and in such a bad state that it is in need of complete restoration before it gets to the point of no return. And then there's the roundhouse. I will say no more about that. When will the City of Fremantle develop, fund and implement a conservation and management plan for the valuable but deteriorating heritage properties it owns, including requiring long-term lessees to undertake their commitments to such works in a timely fashion? I'd also like to talk a bit more briefly about the bulk waste verge collections model. And I support the officer recommendation for continuation of the pre-booked model of waste collection. It has shown itself to be much more efficient particularly for properties that have multiple residences and a high rate of tenant turnover, and where residents have no ability to store large amounts of waste on site. As required collections mean waste can be disposed of expeditiously rather than building up to the detriment of individual or collective amenity and safety. I note Councillor Lawver's alternative tonight to revert to the previous system, largely on the grounds of cost per tonne, which is apparently based on the reduction in the weight of waste collected from 1,200 tonnes to 350 tonnes, which should be celebrated as a success. In addition, the proportion of waste collected that goes to landfill has been reduced from 70% or 840 tonnes to 30% or 105 tonnes. So I support the continuation of the current model, but also note that the lower than expected tonnage surely provides opportunities to reduce the overall costs when contracts are renegotiated. Thank you.
Thank you. On the first question, I might start by going to the Director of City Business to talk about, I guess, the allocation of funding across those heritage properties, and then I'll ask if any of the other directors want to add anything.
Through the chair, so with respect to Victoria Hall, we did make a comment about some of the costing or contributions that might be required over the next few years. As we go out to the market and seek interest from different tenants, we would hope to have a conversation with some of those tenants around what they might like to contribute as part of a lease moving forward. There is obviously allocations in the current budget for Town Hall and possibly for future budgets, and obviously the current tenant of the Fremantle Markets is investing significantly in that premises as well. So the long-term plan is something that we look to for planning, I guess, investment into those facilities, and we also hope to work with the tenants that occupy them as well.
To the question of a conservation management plan, I'm not sure if there's any need to speak to that. I'm not quite sure who that belongs to, but I mean, I think it's fair to say it's all budgeted through the asset management process that we go through every year at budget, so, and done according to conservation advice. Okay, Margaret Kerr.
My question relates to the shark barrier item. I refer to the city's media release on the 28th of March 2024 entitled Plans Progress for Bathers Beach Enclosed Swimming Area, and I note the following. The city will also seek to formalise an offer from nearby business owners to contribute to the annual maintenance costs of the barrier and potentially the cost of improving bathroom facilities near the beach. My question is, could the city advise whether there has been any significant progress in securing a contribution to either maintenance costs or improving facilities? I do notice that there is a proposed amendment on the agenda, but I would still appreciate any updates that can be given publicly at this stage. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll go to the Director of City Business on that one as well.
Through the chair, pending the decision tonight, we do absolutely intend to go back to that business owner who put that proposal on the table and continue discussions and try and formalise that offer. Our understanding is that business owner is still intending to make that contribution.
Excellent. All right, Barry Emerald.
Kaya. Hello, everyone. Thank you, councillors, for being here today. Thank you for listening to what we have to say. My name is Baz. I've been a part of the Plein Air project since its inception. I've painted at both Westgate Mall and the National Storage Spot in North Fremantle. These spaces have allowed me to practice my art on a large scale in a public place. I don't have walls this size at my home or my studio, so having free access to large spaces like these have been very beneficial to my arts practice. Because these walls are in such visible places, they have allowed me to receive feedback on my artwork. This feedback from the general public has been invaluable and has helped to shape my creative direction. Plein Air also provides a place for artists to meet, talk about art, and share painting techniques. These discussions are crucial for mural artists, as a lot of these techniques are very specific and hard to learn on your own. I've met many other artists while painting at Plein Air, and have since collaborated with a few of them on other creative projects. Freo is known as an artistic hub. People travel into Fremantle to experience the art it has to offer, from the annual Street Arts Festival to the exhibitions at the Arts Centre, to the many murals and public art pieces scattered around the city and the Fremantle Biennale. Expanding the Plein Air project is a great way for Freo Council to show that it supports artists and cares about creative professionals. I look forward to painting Munchie Skate Park and including many more public walls in the Plein Air project in the future. Thanks, Ward 1.
Thanks, Barry. And John Dowson.
Good evening, Council. John Dowson, Fremantle Society. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Ian Kerr for what he said about heritage in Fremantle. He summed up things very well, how naughty Council has been with their neglect and lack of budget. I'm here to talk about 5 Beach Street, and the office is recommending full demolition, despite earlier expression of interest of at least keeping the front facade. Now, given that the 3 owners have passed the property on to St Pat's, the onus is on St Pat's to do the right thing by investigating the possible retention of this facade. Now, Alan Kelsall, the architect, wrote a report back in 2003, and I sent this to all councillors today. I picked out some of the juicy bits about some of the key aesthetic values, historic value, social value, and rarity. And I rang the architect today and said, do you still agree with those comments? And he said yes, in terms of the value of what is still there, even though it is a even though it is a degraded site. Now, it's a degraded site largely because of councils not enforcing the previous owner to actually do the right thing and build his 4 stories of apartments in compliance. But St Pat's has now got an asset. I don't know what they had to pay for it, probably almost nothing. But the asset is worth $3.5 to $4 million, depending on which real estate agent you talk to. And it is a very valuable site in a very important area. And I do think there is no urgency to determine the fate of the facade. The building's now secure. There are, unfortunately, no replacement plans for the site, meaning that the streetscape may be blighted for years by a large vacant site similar to the one adjacent next door to the Australia Hotel. Now, as the well-loved St Pat's significantly expands its footprint in the area, it needs to be sensitive to the social license it possesses by ensuring that its activities do not overwhelm the chance for the area to be a high-quality attractor for future residents. And neither does it want to be seen as unnecessarily destroying heritage in the area. So please, councillors, let's do this right. The streetscape values are there in the letter I sent you. Please, I'm glad Councillor Lang has got a motion before you tonight. Let's explore what we can do to help the streetscape and keep the facade. Thank you.
Thank you. Toby Lassick.
Hi there. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Plein Air project as well as Baz. I myself have been lucky enough to take part in 2 events actually with the Plein Air projects, one at Westgate Mall and one time in the North Fremantle site. So I think it is, for me, painting at Westgate Mall was one of the best days of my life. I met some of my heroes, painted alongside them. It was great. I learnt so many things. And I think that's what it's really all about, is providing a space for people to learn and practice this art form, because as much as some people, I understand, may not like street art and all of that, it's a skill like any other and it takes practice. So without places like this, you can't expect to see people getting better. And to provide places for youth like me and my friends to come and paint, it provides a space for a new generation to come and be talented. And I mean, I know there's a few other places around, or event sort of things around. There's a phase program with Melville. There's one in Leaderville. They're just great. I think they provide safe space, anything, and yeah, I'm here to vouch for it. And yeah, it's a great space. Thank you.
Thanks, Toby. And last up, I have Larry. Larry, I don't have a second name. I have a first name.
Kaya, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm also here to speak on behalf of Plain Air, or to support it rather. I don't really have anything personally to do with it. I used to be a part of the phase project that Toby just mentioned, and so it's good to hear that. Phase project's incredible, and to see the Plain Air project come to life just over the last few years has just been fantastic for me. I'm a mural artist now myself, and just to see some of the young people who've come through the phase project and go on to bigger and better things, mural artists, tattoo artists, you name it. It's really been a hub and I guess a really great encouraging space for youngish people to come along and meet each other and associate and learn and I guess network, all of those great things that it's just quite difficult to do in that kind of social setup. So not asking anything, just saying thanks for providing that for them. Right. Cheers.
Thank you, Larry. And then page 2, I've got Max Richards.
Hello, councillors. Thank you for your time. I'm a local artist. I've been painting for quite a long time and born and bred in Fremantle. I am here to support Plain Air and the movement forward to presenting these walls and making them more of a feature and a draw card to the community. There's lots of experience that I've had throughout Australia with different areas in this sort of platform, but I'm here to support basically the mural projection forward and a safe place to create art and engage young and older people within the community. And that's pretty much all I need to say. So thank you for your time and all the best.
Thanks, Max. And Shana Garvin.
Hello. Oh, too close. I'll step back. Thank you for your time tonight to look at this innovative artist-run initiative. And from its inception 5 years ago, we've seen it grow in so many positive ways. This motion that we're presenting today is to activate the area known as, I guess, formerly the Captain Munchies Skate Park area. And we'd like to motion that for activation through Plain Air projects and in kind partnership with the City of Fremantle to legalise the area and allow Plain Air projects to continue to manage the site as we have at the Westgate Mall and the North Freo site. In these 5 years, the positive outcomes have spoken for themselves, as you've heard tonight. From my own view, it has given me a lot more passion to formalise this agreement with the city so the city can actually start to document the social changes that this is making and how important it is not only to artists, the community, the public. It enhances tourism locally. People are coming and getting their photos taken while artists are happily working. It's a beautiful thing to see and watch and grow, and I'm honoured to be the surrogate director of this project, and I'm aiming to develop it as a community group. So I appreciate everyone's effort, past, present and future, and hopefully we can keep building great things creatively. Thank you.
Thanks, Shana. All right, I don't have any further speakers listed. We've got a bit more of the sort of items to get through before we can get to debate, but I'm going to suggest that we bring forward the Plain Air item and do that first because I think it will have potentially less long-winded conversation than the TAFE item will do. So we might deal with that one quite quickly at the front of the agenda and then go to the TAFE site item if that's okay. Petitions, I haven't received notice of any petitions, deputations or presentations. So I'll ask for someone to move that we confirm the minutes from the last meeting of Council on 9th October. Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Van Dawson. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Is there any elected member communication? Councillors Lang and then Williamson Wong.
Only a brief one on a matter close to my heart, but I know it's boring most of you to death by now. City of Bayswater last night adopted their revised cat law, which is identical to the one in Northern. So that's following their community consultation, which was received very positively. They've now adopted the law, and then it goes out to be gazetted. So they're moving full steam ahead. So that's, I just brought that up because the last we voted on it, we were in a wait and watch position.
Councillor Williamson Wong.
Thank you. I just wanted to note that myself, Councillor Van Dawson and Mayor Fitzharding attended the Zero Homelessness Summit recently, and now I can't even remember how long ago, but within the last 2 weeks. And it was great. I attended with Mayor Fitzharding the workshop on the role local governments play in ending homelessness, and I guess wanted to share some insights I learnt in terms of homelessness being an issue that can be solved and not just a perpetuating crisis, but it does require high-level collaboration amongst all stakeholders. And I guess also the idea that there's no need for us to reinvent the wheel. There's lessons, and we learned from lots of people across the globe about the options and opportunities, and also noted that Fremantle's doing already great things. Specifically wanted to mention the mental health outreach program that we have recently started, and the Library Connect program, which many other councils do not have. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson Wong, and I agree with you. And I think there were two things I really noted. One was that not all local governments want to play in this space, and it's it was really recognised, I think, by attendees that Fremantle is an active participant in solving homelessness. And we had lots of people come up to us from other councils saying, I wish our council would take a similar attitude. So it's a testament to this group as a whole that is something that we feel very invested in. And we also had the opportunity at the end of that summit to launch the Fremantle Zero project, which is, formalising, I guess, our commitment to ending homelessness in Fremantle. So that was fantastic. I also wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that I went to the Fremantle Education Centre 50 years in operation at Princess May Park. I just thought I'd mention it because it's quite the sleeper. It's one of those things, I think we know there's a building there, it's near Clancy's. We don't necessarily know what goes on in there. It's a major hub for vocational education and training with thousands of students every day. Clancy's is their cafeteria, which personally I think would be pretty great. But to the extent that they now do outreach into schools to be able to train all the people who want to be trained by the Fremantle Education Centre, primarily in care professions, childcare and things like that. But it feels like a hidden treasure down there, and it really does have a huge catchment and a huge impact on young people's lives. So that was pretty amazing. Yes, and I think that's all. It's also Fremantle Design Week, but I shan't talk about that because there's so much to talk about, and there's a program on the internet, so people can look it up themselves. Okay, so that takes us to the reports. So as I said, if Councillor Lang, if you want to move your notice of motion, seconded by Councillor Williamson Wong. You want to speak to that?
Thank you for bringing it forward. I appreciate that. Those of you hopefully recognised Plein Air 1 and 2 has been a huge success, and that's in part to Lady Banana's great work. Or Shana, sorry. Yeah, also want to pay kudos to Silverleaf because without their permission, this would never have got off the ground in the first place. And I think they did roll the dice on this. in Westgate Mall, and it was much communication with Silverleaf to allow us to use the back of the Target wall to create that space in the Westgate Mall, and I've never seen it look so good. And it was mentioned people are going in and taking photos and doing Instagram type stuff in that space now, and that's due to the artists taking control of the space. What's different about this space that we're proposing this evening is it'll be the first one on a council property. The second one is on the National Storage Building in North Fremantle. This would be on our own property, so it'd be an opportunity for us to be handing over an asset that we have, and I believe it will be in better hands with the plein air crew than in our hands. At the moment, everyone's also probably quite familiar with the skate park. With more access to more artists, I think we can beautify the space and make that more of an attraction as well. That's all I have to say on it, and I hope my colleagues support this, and I look forward to seeing Plein Air 3 in action. Thank you all for coming this evening to speak on the item.
Councillor Williamson-Wong.
We're getting a pattern going. I am excited that Councillor Lang has brought this forward, so thank you for doing so. I guess two parts for me. One, it's very exciting to see an opportunity for us to recognise that street art is a valuable form of art. Often it's disregarded, I think, and it's a very important part of any city and urban space as an art form. And secondly, that I think what we heard tonight from people who came to speak, thank you to everyone who came to speak, is that it's not necessarily just a project about producing artworks, but it's also a project that fosters community and connection. And that, to me, is almost the same, if not more exciting, because we know that there's so many pockets of people who don't feel connected to community, and that is growing, and opportunities like this mean that we can create more spaces for community to occur. So I'm excited.
Excellent. I imagine we're all fairly positive about it as well. I did want to ask, I'll go to you, Councillor Thompson, in a sec, whether, given it's PTA land, if we need to get any approvals or external agency input. I would hope they'd say yes, but is that something that needs to happen with this site? Okay. Councillor Thompson? By the way, that was the answer to that was it is, for those who didn't get a microphone. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'm supportive of the issue, and I think it's well worth doing. The only consideration I have is I think there's probably a little bit more not work to do, but I just feel a little bit uncomfortable about just simply on the basis of this one report of approving it as it is. So what I would suggest is that in recommendation 2, that we put the words subject to officer investigation, and then the rest supports the addition of a third plein air site. It just gives council a little bit of leeway to enable us to see whether there are any issues that we might want to consider. And the other change I would make is at 3, rather than approve officers investigate, just simply delegate to the CEO the negotiation of an MOU with plein air. It's just simply a safeguard in case there are any issues that might arise that we wouldn't want to have fully endorsed this, not having officers look at it in some detail. So it's still supportive of it, but it just simply gives us a little bit of leeway. If there's any issues that we need to consider, officers then have the capacity to bring it back to us.
All right, Councillor, so you've got that up on the screen now. That's Councillor Thompson moving that as an amendment. Do we have a seconder for that amendment now that you can see it? Councillor Archibald? Any discussion on the amendment? Councillor Lang?
Just a question. I don't disagree with what Councillor Thompson's saying, but I'm just curious about what further is need to investigate, because my understanding is the team have looked into this, and in terms of the park itself, I'm not aware of any maintenance that we've potentially done to it for a period either. So I'm just curious what we would be investigating. This is kind of like more of a, it's not that complicated. I'm curious what we'd be investigating.
All right, I might just get some officer comment on investigations so far.
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, we have looked into it, and we support the addition of the third site and support the project in general. Our concern is mostly around the development of an MOU, which works for the city and the Plein Air project in terms of management of the spaces.
All right, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't mind part 3, the addition in there, because it's essentially the same thing. We should always be authorising the CEO anyway, not officers. That's not our job. That's the CEO's job. And I don't think it's necessary to have the part in 2, because part 3 actually says that, CEO negotiates and enters into an MOU. Now, we trust the CEO will negotiate and enter into an MOU with all the matters that the staff have already thought about and talked about, and that come to light as you're producing those. So I think it's more than adequate to just have the words in the amendment in 3 and not in 2.
Okay, Councillor.
I agree, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Thompson's happy to amend it to just have 3. Councillor Lorver? Okay. All right, on that basis, I don't think you'd want to close particularly, so I can put the amendment to a vote. All those in favour? Yep, the amendment. Yep, and that looks unanimous. And the item as amended, is there any further discussion? If not, Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, look, I just also wanted to thank all of the people that have put this together, and particularly someone that I've had something to do with in the past, and I really only know you as Nanas, so I'll call you that, but who has, like many others, put a lot of work in over the years into harnessing the potential of youth artists, and run workshops, run things at markets, brought in kids when they're, almost just out of their nappies to, express themselves in a positive way. And really this is just that sort of kind of opportunity on steroids. It really is bringing together people that might otherwise experiment individually and come together and experiment collectively and in a really positive and constructive way, which only benefits themselves collectively, individually, but also the community more broadly on all sorts of levels. So I thank all of those that do that work and have no hesitation in supporting this.
Very good. Councillor Lang to close.
Thank you. And following on from that, Councillor Williamson-Wong raised a really good point. Yeah, the community connections I've seen firsthand and the teaching, it's really impressive to watch. And I encourage any of you, if you haven't actually been along to a Plein Air paint jam, head down, like get a coffee or whatever you might, and go and watch. It is really exciting to see everyone and speak to everybody and see what's happening. So thank you for raising that important element of Plein Air. And as Councillor Sullivan said, yeah, thank you to the artists and thanks to the staff for pulling this together so quickly. This is one of the first spaces where this can occur in Western Australia, and everyone goes to Melbourne and walks down Hosier Lane and takes photos and those kinds of things. We've got an opportunity to embrace that or create a version of that in Fremantle. So I hope that our community and our team here at the city can embrace and support the Plein Air project to grow and become a really big success in Freo, bigger than it already is.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. There you go. All right, let's go to Beaconsfield. So we've got the officer's recommendation. Did somebody want to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Archibald, seconded by Councillor Williamson-Wong. Councillor Archibald, did you want to open discussion on this one, or? Happy to wait. Excellent. All right. I wanted to get us started. We do have an amendment, I noticed, by Councillor Sullivan. Yep. Councillor Mofflin, do you want to speak first?
Yeah, I just wanted to raise a question and picking up on the question from the public earlier in regards to the traffic management and particular the movement being encouraged to travel down Grosvenor as opposed to Caesar, and just get some comment from staff in regards to how that particularly looks and what the impacts they see. And I think the member of the public, Corinne, maybe I think it was, spoke about a couple of numbers in terms of traffic movements, and it would be great to have a comment on that too.
Yep, happy to get some officer feedback on that.
Thank you for the question. Through the chair, I'll provide a little bit of detail, but manager of development approvals might want to add to this. But there was a comment made around 800 vehicles a day that this particular subdivision would generate. In the engineering report that was commissioned by the applicant, they're talking about 94 vehicles during the AM peak and 95 during the PM peak. And that's a total of 950 vehicles daily. To me, the key observation that was made was that is significantly less than the car generation trips that came out of the TAFE building that pre-existed, which was 1750. So notwithstanding there's change, notwithstanding there will be additional traffic to what there is now, overall it will be less than where we were with TAFE.
And in regard to Caesar Street?
We haven't done detailed analysis of the traffic modelling, although our engineering department has gone through the traffic modelling plans and have concluded that it's adequate.
Right. Councillor Mofflin, did you want to follow on from there? Or? Okay, Councillor Graham.
Yeah, mine was just a follow-up question to Councillor Mofflin's, and thanks for bringing up that. Thanks, Councillor Mofflin, because that's exactly what I was going to ask about. But the one that one of the ladies brought up, lane 5, why is the exit left only? I mean, it's an exit, so why can't it be left and right? And she is correct. I mean, I live in that area. I'm not declaring an interest because I'm a bit further away. But there is always problems with Field, Davies, Curedale in particular, because that's a straight-through street. So if you're getting more cars going out of Grosvenor into Curedale Street, we're going to get more and more complaints, obviously. So it's going to have to be dealt with at some stage. So I just want to really know why that left-hand exit. I mean, if it's both ways, it might alleviate a little bit of a problem further down the track.
Can I get some officer comment on that one too? Thank you.
We can only guess as to why the traffic designers chose that. My best guess at that, Councillor, would be by banning that right turn, we'll stop the congestion going into that intersection. By having the right turns only, you tend to get the flow happening a little quicker. If you have right and left turns at the top of lane 5, you may need to widen it so that traffic can go, can stack both ways. But I think the overall intent of trying to get permeability through the network is a good transport principle, because you can do as much modelling as you like and you only really know when it's built and people's movement patterns will change. So just to build in that resilience and permeability is a good underlying principle.
Councillor Van Dawson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to follow on from the question from Councillor Mofflin. You mentioned that this a key consideration is the reduction in number of vehicles. However, it's not just the number, but the traffic flow and the streets that are impacted. Could you please clarify where the 1,700 cars a day from the TAFE site exit and enter now, compared to this structure plan, which looks to be directing them all onto Grosvenor Street and the surrounding streets? So it's sort of the impact will clearly be on all the local streets and the residential area, and also if you could clarify why they haven't utilised Lefroy Road and Caesar and other streets to provide, just to disperse this traffic, as I would see to be an option. I don't see any restrictions on Lefroy Road access. I don't think it's a main roads controlled with restricted access or anything. Just wondering why they're choosing to put it all on Grosvenor, and yeah, where do they currently exit? Like, what's the impact will be different if they're currently exiting Lefroy or have that option? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Van Dawson.
We'll try and answer that, not knowing exactly the rationale behind why. Under the TAFE scenario, there would have been cars within the TAFE site, and of course there was a lot of car parking on our car park at the bottom of Bruce Lee Oval, which students used. I don't have the data as to where people came to that site and exited from. I probably would just go back to the earlier comment. The more permeable it is, the more route choice there is, and wherever there's congestion, people can get out. With the current plan, it is a little bit more restricted. I acknowledge the point being made.
All right, Councillor Archibald.
Thank you. Could I just ask if I could just get a comment on whether we can have more discussion on the road network that surrounds the subdivision plan at a later date? It seems to me that there could be a bit more discussion with residents and the people who are putting the proposal together, so that we might be able to look at some of the options. I'm aware that there's an amendment by Councillor Sullivan to not have Laneway 5, I think, onto Grosvenor. But, in approving this tonight, is it necessary that those road networks can't be revised in the overall plan?
All right. I would note that this is us giving advice to the WA Planning Commission, and we're not neither the proponent who wrote this plan or the approving body. So we are caught in other people's timeframes. But perhaps the director can comment on whether there's a possibility after the WAPC has considered this structure plan to revisit the road network.
Through the chair, I see absolutely no reason why not. And even after subdivision is made, the roads will come back to the city for management. I guess we will be monitoring them for a very long time and making adjustments as appropriate.
Okay, thank you. All right, is that it for questions? Does anyone have any discussion on the item? If not, Councillor Sullivan, did you want to go to your amendment?
Thank you, and they're in two parts. So I'll deal with the first part on page 3 of the additional documents, the proposal to add a part 16, which deals with Laneway 5.
Is there a seconder for this amendment? Up on the screen, Councillor Van Dawson.
Thank you. My primary reason, I guess, in looking at Laneway 5 flowed from my concern about parking in Grosvenor Street. So obviously there are currently 40 or there were 40 bays provided along the edge of Grosvenor Street in right angle for the TAFE. And I was very much keen to make sure that there was a reasonable amount of parking retained. The proposal as it currently stands goes down to 11. If you actually look at the landscape plans as opposed to the subdivision plans, you'll actually see that there must have been an earlier version of the proposal. So if you actually look in the attachments on page 199 or 200 of the attachments, you'll actually see the landscape plan, and it retains a lot of the parking, albeit rebuilt, but retains the same sort of parking in the same sort of location. So clearly they were thinking along the same lines, and somewhere along the way someone has suggested, no, don't do right angle parking. We don't do that. It's not something we do anymore. We have to have parallel parking and go down to 11. Well, we don't. That's, we might need to traffic calm Grosvenor Street to make sure right angle parking is a little bit easier to use. We might need to do what I have continuously stated in this council, that you might need to actually require right angle parking to be reverse in, like they do in other similarly sophisticated places around Australia. So there are opportunities to continue to have that, particularly given that along Grosvenor Street there's actually a road widening. So the verge is actually going to be twice as wide as what it currently is, and so there's plenty of opportunity for landscaping, the retaining of the existing trees and the like. Now, I hadn't looked at that landscape plan originally, and I felt that dealing with laneway 5 would be a good way of getting additional right angle parking further up, effectively retaining almost all of the 40 bays that currently exist. I still think that's not a bad idea. If you look at laneway 5, the laneway 5 is the one that has a left out turn. It has a left out turn, I'm assuming, because of its proximity to the intersection of Grosvenor Street and Lewington Street. And they're trying to avoid kind of people doing a right-hand turn and not seeing someone coming out doing a left-hand turn or whatever. I'm not absolutely sure what the thinking is, but they're clearly worried about the intersection. What I was worried about, and it's a little bit like what some of the members of the public are saying as well, is the potential for people to start using those laneways to get out of the development area as a bit of a rat run. Now, we already see that in a number of places. We certainly see it down in the South Beach redevelopment area, parts of which are in Coburn, and we've had to modify laneways to be one way or left turn only and all sorts of things, and we go through an enormous amount of effort afterwards trying to fix the problems that should have been thought about in the first place. So my feeling is that some of those laneways are just going to, particularly if the medium density stuff is accessed from within the subdivision. Hopefully the big one is actually accessed off Lefroy Road. But if they're accessed from within, someone trying to get to Freo is going to run up one of those laneways for sure and get out of the development. If you make it so that you can't get out through there, then there is no benefit in trying to run through that particular group of laneways. And that was my thinking. I'm not overly concerned one way or another, but I guess what I'm thinking as well is that some of these laneways do provide rat run opportunities, and where it comes out right at a sort of an intersection where people are going to be coming and crossing, it's probably not the best place to have cars coming out of there. I also note that, yes, that will mean that the rubbish bins for 2, maybe 3 lots might either have to be wheeled out to Grosvenor Street or the rubbish truck will have to reverse into that laneway. The rubbish truck is going to have to navigate through those laneways anyway. There is no physical way that they won't have to do a turning movement into some of those in some of those laneways. So irrespective of whether the laneway is closed or not, I feel that it's the same conditions for the rubbish truck. So they're the only reasons why you wouldn't do it. I think there are some pretty valid reasons why you do it. The opportunity potentially for more parking, although I suspect the staff will say you can't have right angle parking where the intersection is directly opposite, even though it existed before, and there's no reported crashes in the history book for that area. So yeah, leave it with you. If you don't want it as a recommendation to the Planning Commission, it could actually be added into the next bit so that it simply becomes more of an advice note that could be broadened out, I guess, so that it includes a little bit more of a conversation about or the network rather than just laneway 5.
All right. Do we have other speakers on the amendment? Councillor Graham?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to support the amendment. Looking at the plan, I mean, we've had consideration tonight from a member not wanting the left-hand turn, but actually I think Councillor Sullivan actually answered that, given the fact that it is right on Lewington Street, and it would mostly be better to turn left than right there with cars coming out of Lewington Street. But I think the idea that this is going to be a rat run is fairly subjective. You've only got about 10 houses on one side of the laneway and about 3/4 of that number on the other side. So you're certainly not going to have a rat run like there is on Kildale Street or Davey Street or Lewington Street or Field Street, as is being experienced now, and Grosvenor Street. I mean, that's where council will face its biggest problems with this development, and it'll even be a bigger problem when the heart of the old Davis Park gets done up, if it ever does. So I would much prefer to see this laneway left open. It does give another opportunity for cars to go out there and not clog up laneway 7 or the other laneways. So yeah, for those reasons, I won't be supporting it.
Thanks, Councillor Graham. Have any other speakers? Councillor Archibald.
Thank you. Yes, look, I can certainly appreciate where Councillor Sullivan's coming from, but I feel like there are kind of like multiple issues in there, even just access and egress of the rubbish trucks is one of them. But whether it's that particular lane, how we arrange parking, that's why I was asking earlier whether rather than us actually agreeing to something that says that we ensure that this lane does not include vehicle connection, that this issue is reviewed, but as part of the whole, because there may be other solutions that are preferable to this one. So I can't support it just as it is. That's why I would prefer it if it was a more holistic review of the access and egress and how we could make sure that rat running was minimised.
All right. Look, I'm inclined to support Councillor Sullivan's amendment. Also, just given probably the broader need to look at that corner generally. We have a parking area at the edge of, we have 2 parking areas at the edge of Bruce Lee Oval there, both with fairly haphazard access and egress. And I think, that intersection has the potential to be pretty complicated as it is in terms of people accessing the car parking that we have, let alone with the addition of another way that you can get in and out of the development. So I'm happy to support the amendment as it is, but likewise, if Councillor Sullivan wants to work on something that is a more broad consideration of restricting the ability to rat run through the area, I'm also happy to consider that. So, Councillor Sullivan, did you want to close on this one, or what's your way forward?
My sense is if this isn't supported, it still gives me the opportunity to add an additional point in the next bit. So I've been scribbling that down. So if you don't like this one, presuming it's acceptable to do that, second bite of the cherry.
Okay, we'll wait and see what happens next. That was in closing. All right, so I'll put this one to a vote. All those in favour? And that's Councillors Van Dawson, Sullivan, Williamson, Wong, Lang, myself, Lorva, and against. That's the remainder. So that's carried as is. All right, you can stop scribbling, Councillor Sullivan.
Well, maybe I should add it. Anyway, so I'll move my second part of it, and I'll speak to the possibility of adding a broader version of the traffic flow and laneway stuff. So I'll just move that as it is for now, and then.
Do we have a seconder for that one? Councillor Moughlin, thank you.
Thank you. Obviously, there's a number of things. I'm not going to go through them all. The one that I think was particularly important was the Grosvenor Street parking, and I hope you've had an opportunity to have a look at the landscape plan and see exactly what I think the Development WA probably had in mind originally. I've been through this process before, and it gets, it gets to a whole bunch of people and it gets whittled down to being, no, we prefer you to do it some other way. And you go from 30 bays down to 10 all of a sudden, and that's how it gets built. Now, um, I don't see any reason why what's shown in the landscape plan wouldn't work. I do think Grosvenor Street will need to be dealt with a little bit more carefully to make sure it virtually almost feels like it is the car park that it is. I mean, it's always been essentially a car park section next to the park with right angle parking on both sides. And as long as you gateway that in the urban design, and I mean by having things at each end, it will be fine. And in any case, we will want to do that because you're going to have a lot of pedestrians going up Caesar Street and across the end of Grosvenor Street, and a lot of pedestrians going across from the parks through this subdivision, trying to get across to Lewington Street. So there is a logical aspect that the council will need to do some works in those key areas to make them safe and to make Grosvenor Street operate more functionally. And so dealing with some of the matters that the members have raised tonight, sorry, the public have raised tonight. That one to me is a no-brainer. The rest of them are pretty obvious, adding a little bit more parking down there to the multiple dwellings and making sure that the bicycle facility and accommodation through the POS really picks up on the fact that these green linkages that we want to see, these regional green linkages that we want to see running north-south, actually ultimately include dual use paths for the more open areas, and where they have to go through developments like this, that there is a clear and accommodating way of riding through the development, not necessarily a dual use path, probably desirably not technically a dual use path, but for all intents and purposes, a very accommodating shared space for cyclists to be able to move through the development. And you would have heard the Director of Planning talk about that sort of balancing act that we need to achieve. And I just want to make absolutely sure, it might already be in there sufficiently, but I want to make sure officers focus on that. I'll quickly suggest a variation or an addition, if that's okay with the Mayor. So
Yep.
What I'm thinking is adding in the first part under XII, another dot point that reviews the road systems, particularly the laneways, with regard to exit points, direction of flow, and design to ensure I was just going to deal with the laneways, so I sort of like added the. I don't know. It's a bit unsure as to whether the councillors want just the laneways to be dealt with or the roads. I don't think we can go back in and change the actual roads, but I think you can change the rest.
Could I just suggest it's how the laneways interact with the road system?
It's probably review the internal road system in relation to its in relation to the interaction with the surrounding roads. We can keep it very simple. I think we're just.
All right.
So it might actually be probably the best thing to do is to say reviews the detailed design of the internal roads, so that we're clear we're not going to change everything. It's just the nuancing of space a little bit.
Okay. Do we need all these
Then
words?
no, you can get rid of after surrounding roads. You can get rid of everything else. Yeah.
Yay.
So I can either include that in my.
Is your seconder happy to include that in the amendment? Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Included.
All right. I think I've probably said enough. The second part is something that council, I think, has supported before, where it's really just indicating we need to do a bit of work about how we actually pay for all of these elements that are in these new developments, and this one particularly, because it does include a community board that we're going to have to adopt and continue to operate for, ever and a day, and that will come with cost. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Sullivan, for your work on this. I think, it's been informative to have a number of these sort of developments come before us and structure plans. And I think where we already know an area is really busy with cars at certain times of the day or night or whatever, it's pretty important to make sure the parking is well considered. Nothing exists as an island in Fremantle. There's always something else going on, and it's concerning, I guess when you see a reduction in car bays that you are frequently used to seeing absolutely chock-a-block full. So appreciate the work on that. I do think, it's not dealt with in the amendment, but I'll say it now because I'm speaking. The broader issue around safe crossing places, particularly on South Street, I think is going to be one of those flow-on issues that this development will provoke, where there is nowhere currently for, students at Freo College to cross South Street at a signalised intersection. And just as it gets busier, more cars, it just, we really want a connection across between Whitegum Valley and Beaconsfield there that meets the needs. This is another opportunity to kind of prosecute that argument, but not in this particular moment. So it's not forgotten, it needs to happen. And I think starting to get, as Councillor Sullivan's pointed out, some of those green linkages, the portions of those green linkages completed builds a stronger argument for connecting those up. As Councillor Sullivan has said before, being able to cycle from Boo Park through to Clontarf Road or beyond to the beach. And part of that is safe crossings. So we need to keep that in mind. Is there anything further on the amendment? Okay, well, I'll put that one to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. And back to the item as amended. All right, and Councillor Van Dawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on the item as amended, I haven't actually made my decision yet, so I'm looking forward to hearing the general discussion on it. And thank you, Councillor Sullivan, for your amendments. I did support them because should Council vote to support this recommendation to WAPC, I would like them included. I think it highlights the issue of traffic and parking in this area, and if some more discussion and attention can be given to that at the decision-making stage, would be much appreciated. However, at this stage, again, I reserve my decision. I find it really difficult to support this structure plan. I'll just note what I do like about it. First, it's got a great provision of public open space. It looks like there's a genuine intent to deliver quality open space. It's going to deliver a good amount of housing, which is great. We need more housing in Fremantle. It looks like there's some diversity of the lot sizes, which gives opportunity for some diversity of housing as well. So that's what I do like, and appreciate the officer's recommendations and our traffic engineers assessing it and finding it to be acceptable from a traffic and access perspective. I acknowledge those their assessment comments and recommendations, but also just noting they can only assess what's put on, what's proposed. Now, my issue with this structure plan and the structure planning process in general, sorry, am I too close, is that right? Is just proponents do not give enough attention or consideration of access and traffic management and the impacts on the local area. So there are many options that they could propose here. They could have access roads going straight through the site. They could have access to Lafroy Road, Grosvenor, Caesar. You could distribute the traffic, where it goes and who it impacts. What they've chosen to do is put it all out Grosvenor, but don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it looks to me, so no access from or to Lefroy Road or Caesar. What that's doing is creating really great amenity for the people that live there. And that's the focus of drawing up a structure plan, property value, delivering amenity for the residents that live there as much as possible. You can see they've tried to do that, all the public open space, which actually provides a barrier to Lefroy Road, which is the busiest road. Instead of, which, great, but how does that affect the people around? So what they're doing here in this design is preventing rat running through their site, because you can't get through it, but putting all that traffic from this development rat running every street around it. As Councillor Graham mentioned, the impact on Kewadale and Seaview and those streets on the other side. So, yeah, that's just the comments I wanted to make at this stage. I do look forward to hearing further discussion, but yeah, at this stage I won't be supporting the officer's recommendation on that basis, but thank you again, Councillor Sullivan. If Council do decide to support it, yeah, happy that those amendments are in to at least highlight the traffic and parking issues. Thank you.
All right, councillors, over to you. Yeah, Councillor Archibald, maybe don't close yet. Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thank you. I really just wanted to add a small thing, was acknowledging that we had a comment from the public around building spaces of connection into new development sites, and wanting to, I guess, support that idea. I think good development creates spaces to create connection. I've already said that tonight, so I won't repeat my point. And I guess through the policies and documents that we have to guide that, it's really about creating public open space, and this development has delivered higher percentages than required for public open space. That doesn't mean that more couldn't be done to create spaces for connection, but I do, yeah, just want to acknowledge that we had that comment, and I guess this is how developers respond to that, by creating public open space, and we have that in tonight's proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, well, I was basically, until Councillor Van Dawson spoke, I was going to go along with the officer's recommendation, but I think thinking of the issue she raised in terms of the development being essentially great for whoever's going to buy in there, but not so good for the surrounding area, I'm inclined to support her in not voting for the recommendation.
All right, so I just want to clarify where we are at with the process on this one. So am I correct in understanding this is a subdivision plan that follows the approved structure plan?
Thank you, Mayor. It is. The structure plan is approved. We've seen the structure plan, including the landscape works, the intent, the yield that is expected from this piece of land. So this is a subdivision plan only that we're looking at.
And as a second question, if we were to not support the officer's recommendation and we don't currently have an alternative on the table, I assume that would mean we would make no comment to the WAPC?
Through the chair, the officer's recommendation and council decision would go to WAPC for their ultimate consideration and approval or rejection. Thank
you. All right, well, I wasn't going to speak at this point, but I might. I mean, this is a really long story, and it is a story that began with consultation a very long time ago, and I think Councillor Kamada and Councillor Moughlin and Councillor Graham and others stood around in tents with the then Department of Housing to talk about, you know, what we were going to do in the broader Heart of Beaconsfield area. And you know, I guess what's pleasing about this is that a number of the things that the community drew on the plans for this area have actually eventuated. And some of them are by reason of topography or vegetation. So that green link through the middle of the site was a key community consideration. It was something people very much wanted to see, and they wanted that to be permeable so it would create the green connection through to Freo College and through to the existing path that leads across towards Clontarf Road. They wanted that space to be a community space. They wanted to see some buildings that had the potential for mixed use at the bottom around that area. So there'd be the potential for cafes or childcare or, you know, a lot of childcare already, although they all seem to be full in that area. So it does reflect to me the broader sentiment of the community around what they wanted to see in that space. I guess my concern would be if you grid patterned it as per the rest of the neighbourhood and made it a sort of through the middle and up and down, you may not actually be able to achieve those green space outcomes that are quite significant. In terms of car usage, and I completely agree, and thank goodness there are actually some car share operators in Western Australia. It would be great to see, much as lots of developments do in like the rest of the world, that there's car share for people there to minimise the number of cars. Quite honestly, at that location, you've got a bus on Lefroy Road and a bus on South Street, and they're frequent and affordable and easy. So there's a huge amount of public transport available to people. It is also in terms of rat runs. Obviously, Lefroy Road has a bike path, but those in the know do go through the back streets of Beaconsfield there to get to a sort of easier way to get down into Fremantle on your bike. So formalising the bike connections, informing people how those work, you'd hope that there'd be a fair amount of active transport in the area as well. It is a cost of density that we have more cars and we need to work out where they're going to go. But I think my hope is that the kind of people who are attracted to live in Fremantle and attracted to live in these kind of spaces because of the green space, because of the access to all of the amenity and all of the transport options, might choose something better than jumping in a vehicle. So I'm going to support the officer's recommendation. As I said, there's nothing else on the table at the moment, but I also want to ensure that the comments that we've made and the amendments that we've made go through to the WA Planning Commission. Councillor Kamada.
Yeah, I was going to try and stay quiet tonight, but this is an important, very important development that's happening in, right on our doorstep, particularly where I'm living. And I think this subdivision plan, it kicks off the rejuvenation of this area, and it's been highlighted by Councillor Sullivan and Van Dawson's input and comments tonight, how critical this is. And as the Mayor indicated, so many boxes have been ticked. We've been going to workshops, as you said, for many years now, and this is just the start, because then you've got the Davis Park development, and then hopefully down the track in our lifetime, something will happen at the quarry site. So the critical thing for me, I think, is if there is a way, and I think the amendments will give us an opportunity perhaps to get some access to either Lefroy Road or to Caesar, it may help alleviate the problems that have been cited tonight. The parking is critical, cycling, pedestrian, all those things have to be so well designed so that we get passage through, right through the whole area, eventually through to Clontarf Hill. I think that's we've got to get this right now so that those things can be put together down the track. And the public transport, that's the bigger picture thing that has to be considered, not only in this area but obviously throughout the whole of Fremantle. So Lefroy Road and South Street, it's so important that we do give people opportunity to be able to get out of their cars wherever possible. So yeah, I will be supporting it, but I'm really hopeful that we can still have an opportunity to improve some of those critical areas that have been cited tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Kamada. Councillor Mofflin.
Thank you. And yeah, I too will be supporting the amended officer's recommendation. And I think to Councillor Kamada's point that the rejuvenation of this site is vitally important for what was and we still term the Heart of Beaconsfield project, and to think back to only 2 years ago when we had a derelict site there, which was of huge concern to the community in terms of its impact, both to students at Fremantle College and more broadly as to what kind of activities were being encouraged by having that derelict site. I think it's really exciting to think that we've got 82 lots for development on that site, and the likely introduction of several hundred new residents to Fremantle in a time where we do want to encourage the growth in, or to be able to provide greater housing and growth in population in Fremantle. I think the comments that have been provided and the amendments do certainly go some way to allaying any concerns that I have. But I would say that as part of the ongoing development through this area, that our input in regards to traffic movement and activity needs to be really strong, and we need to advocate for both the current residents but also the future residents and how the livability of those suburbs.
Thanks, Councillor Mofflin. Councillor Graham?
Yeah, look, I'll just have my two bobs worth. Yes, well, look, we have been meeting for a long time on this subdivision, and to allay perhaps some of the fears of Councillor Van Dawson, the site, the topography of this site has always been one of the major problems and factors. Even when it was the TAFE site, it was, it's up and down, and it's not really suited for too many things, to be honest with you. But it's been through a very long process with the community. There've been a number of interactions. 3 councillors here, I know, have done a fair amount of interaction with people on the neighbouring areas. As I highlighted earlier about the traffic movements in streets like Keildale, Davies and Field. We have also met with staff on that a number of times, and they're well aware of the traffic problems that are currently surrounding it. So I have faith in the staff that they will continue to try and come up with, if there is any better measures that can be put in place, like perhaps some slow, well, the 40 speed limit's going to be one thing when it comes through. So there are factors in there that have been considered for this site, with this site in mind, I should say. We've got to approve something here, and I think the process that we've been down and where we are at the moment is going to be quite a good outcome, albeit the traffic management will be the problem. But yes, I will be supporting it with amended.
Thanks, Councillor Graham. If there's nothing further, I will put it to a vote. Councillor Archibald, did you want to close, or?
I'll just very briefly close. I think a good deal of very sound comments have already been made. It has been a very long journey. It's been part of all of the time I've been on council. We've been talking about this site. So I'm very excited in a way to see it actually finally getting to a point where we're at the subdivision stage. Councillor Graham's quite right, and it was mentioned by others too, that the topography does control a lot of what happens on this site. And the access down to Lefroy is always going to be restricted because of that. So I think the amendments put forward by Councillor Sullivan are very worthy in the sense that we can have that discussion just about the best way of looking at the traffic flows through the site and onto the surrounding road network. So that I'm happy to have that broader discussion, with the process as the process goes forward. So I certainly am pleased to be able to support the recommendation with those amendments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Archibald. With that, I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that appears to be unanimous. Excellent. All right. Next up, we've got the update report on the proposed sale of Victoria Hall, or not so much, as a headline quipped today. Do we have someone to move the officer's recommendation? Councillor Sullivan, seconded Councillor Lorver. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, and I like to thank the staff for their work in going back to the expression of interest parties, but also to the existing users of the hall, to make sure that the conversations were thorough and very much inviting of an opportunity, hopefully, that we will see come forward into the future. So this is a stepping stone, a change in direction back to the old direction kind of thing, which is a pretty reasonable one. It was certainly one that I thought that if there wasn't a fully commercial outcome, that the council could realise that realistically the community approach and reasonable community income into the future was the way to go. And like most other community facilities, we will need to try and work very collectively, collaboratively to try and get the bricks and mortar utilised as well as possible and with a diverse range of people involved. And so hopefully that's the next phase. So thank you for taking council's concerns from last time and moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Lorver?
Yeah, I too just want to thank the staff for bringing this forward to us because I'm really excited as a Fremantle being a creative and cultural city that when this comes back to us for consideration, we'll be able to kind of consider the cultural outcomes from the site as much as commercial outcomes. So I think that that'll be a good report to have, and I'll be very interested in seeing how we as a group decide to balance all that out with the submissions that I received. But just being able to consider that as one element, I think, is exciting for me personally. So thanks for this item.
Thank you, Councillor Lorver. Any further discussion? Look, I think it's a good point, and it's been made a number of times around investment in heritage assets, and I think it's an interesting sort of world we live in where there's a lot of criticism of the cost to council and the budget and assets and all that kind of stuff. But then there's a lot of criticism if we try and divest an asset that needs a lot of work and have someone else do that work on it. At the end of the day, this asset does need a lot of work, and I think it's important to note that the capital cost that's outlined in the report doesn't include a few things like air conditioning, which previous tenants have said are absolutely essential, whether we agree with that or not. So we do need to get some kind of a lease agreement in place that sees some return to council. And I think one of the things we've got to be careful of is creating a paradigm where some arts organisations live rent-free and others don't. We need to get really clear that there's probably a benchmark arts organisation rent, and it's that we need to know what that benchmark is when we're assessing what we get back out of this EOI process, because we do need money we can reinvest into Vic Hall going forward. It's probably not healthy for any organisations to actually really live rent-free. I think it's probably important to have that income driving imperative of audience development or multiple uses or sharing the space with other activities that do bring a degree of income. So I'm excited to see the sort of joint community and creative industry, but also leasing approach that we take to this. And I think there's a lot of opportunities and certainly a lot of interest, even since this was on the agenda this week, from organisations who want to hopefully work together to use the space. So we shall see what comes back. All right, put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Apart from the dogs outside, did not sound happy. All right, the next item, review of the new bulk waste verge collections model. I'll move the officer's recommendation. Do I have a second of that? Councillor Thompson, thank you. I might reserve my right to speak on this one. Councillors. Councillor Thompson, did you wish to jump in?
I'll reserve my right, Madam Mayor.
Thanks. Hang on, does that mean that I'll close if I speak again? Okay, maybe I won't reserve my right if I apparently I'll close if I speak again on the item, so I might not reserve that right. I guess I just will open the discussion by saying This is something that is really consistent with our waste strategy, and waste avoidance is the highest aim in our waste strategy. And this was a central pillar in how we would achieve better recovery rates. And having seen it implemented, and I guess that there is a washout period where something new gets introduced, and we had what was dubbed an increase in illegal dumping. In fact, I think it was just that people thought it was bring out your dead and followed suit with the neighbours, and we've called that illegal dumping. Since the communication campaign has taken place, I think you've seen a really good basically adoption of the system, and I think it's important to think about how it works in the different suburbs as well. So while somewhere like Hilton and Whitecomb Valley, we've got quite wide verges, it was pretty acceptable to have stuff out on those wide verges for quite a period of time, although somewhat annoying if you had a good verge garden and it was, getting increasingly covered with things that people were rifling through. In places like North Fremantle, it was highly problematic to have people's waste on the smaller streets, and I'm sure around Fremantle, as the sort of constrained streets around Fremantle, to have that waste sitting there waiting for collection all over the street. You add in the bin day and it can become, honestly, quite hazardous. So it's a much more systematised model, it's much tidier. Still also has the opportunity for people when they see something on the verge that they like to say, I'll take that home with me, and perhaps the verge valet turns up and there's nothing there. So be it, that's life. It's gone home with someone, and that's what's important. So I support the continuation of the model and think with the improved communications, it's starting to really show benefits. Right, Councillor Lorver.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. So this item was originally brought to us as the way, if I remember correctly, as the only way to extend the verge collection service to the CBD. And that was the question that was asked before I was elected, and this was the reply. I do have an alternate recommendation that will, if this gets voted down or if it seems like that should be moved instead of this, it's sitting there waiting that will see us go back to the bring out your dead kind of model. And what I will say is I will, if we get to that, I will propose an amendment to it that would have staff investigate options that will extend the service to the CBD and other areas that include, skip-ins. Because just in the difference in cost alone, just straight up dollars, we could order about 150 skip-ins online, 9 cubic meters, and that could probably more than cover the CBD. So in the report that's before us, there's some confusion in there. And I just want to start with that the report itself states that this was approved on the 8th of February, but it was actually the 22nd of February at the OCM where this item was adopted. So if you go back and look at those details, it's actually the meeting on the 22nd, not the 8th of February, as stated in our report. But the reasons why I'm not in favor of continuing with the Verge Valet, the first is the cost. We're looking at, we've got some new information just before the meeting tonight, and I updated my calculations, but we're looking at, more than double the cost per ton of waste removed with the Verge Valet, well more than double the cost. And, when we look at those items being removed, they don't just disappear if they're not presented. They're still in someone's shed, they're still in someone's house. And so in order to get those items where they need to go, it costs considerably more. So we're paying more for the service. Secondly, the reason why I don't support continuing is because it's really not what the people want, from my experience. Our report says that 55% of the respondents to the city's own survey were open to considering alternatives. That does not mean that they support Verge Valet. That means they were open to other alternatives. Now that survey was done, there was 237 submissions. They were opt-in responses from mailed paper surveys, social media outreach, and physical drop boxes that were located at the CFC, the FRC, the library, and the meeting place. All those drop boxes were in the CBD kind of downtown area. There weren't any in the outside areas. But in those surveys, what's not in our report was 61% of those people were either satisfied or very satisfied with the Bring Out Your Dead. And only 22% were not satisfied. And of the whole entire survey, only 2% cited that there was no service in the CBD as their reason for not being satisfied. So those results from the survey are not in our report, but there were results that were contained in that survey that the city had done. But for me personally, when this was first being proposed, I asked people on Facebook, and I got well over 200 comments, and everyone wanted to keep the Bring Out Your Dead. Just yesterday, I put up another post asking folks, because this was before us again, and this is after a year of Verge Valet, and just about almost 200 comments again. Literally every single person except for one said that they want to go back to the old system, and they were in favor of doing so. Even folks that said they enjoyed the Verge Valet, but they see a real value in going back to the Verge collective curbside collections. I've also door knocked pretty extensively on this past a week or so, and I have yet to run into anybody. So from my contacts with the community, that's a pretty broad support for going back to the other collection that we previously had. So and that's been consistent from February 2023 to now. So I think for me, I'm going to go with the conversations that I've had, but that's there. Now, the recovery rates. We don't have any stats on the reuse rates. So when we had the Verge side collection, we all know people would come into Fremantle, or that that's the weekend that you can drive around and pick stuff up. So you get a much higher percentage of people that are collecting items and reusing them. Now, me personally, the last time we had the Bring Out Your Dead, I collected enough furniture to fill 2 segments of a triple road train, 2 huge semi-trailers, and that furniture got reused and taken up to the Kimberley and reused. And that was just me personally, and there was hundreds of other people out there in the community collecting items and reusing them. But that's a significant number of items that are now being used and loved in another part of the state. But one council in New South Wales did quantify the reuse rate from placing items on the Verge, and they put it at 43%. Now that's in New South Wales, but that's the one study that I could find that actually tried to figure out how much of that stuff was picked up and reused by the community. So, but and as we know with the Verge Valet, there's just one truck that goes around, collects all the items, chucks it in the back, just like the Bring Out Your Dead model. There aren't specialized trucks coming and collecting different bits. It all goes to the same place, just pretty much the same. So when we look at the recovery rates in our report, it looks pretty impressive. 30% to 70%. But as we know now from the director, the recovery rates from the Bring Out Your Dead last year was 42%. It wasn't the 30%. And if you read the report in February 2023, it says the historical recovery rate from the Bring Out Your Dead model was closer to 50%. So the historical rate that we were presented with for recovery, not reuse, recovery, for the curbside was 50% in 2023, and now a report says it's 30%. So, I don't know which one to really go with there, but I will just acknowledge that there might be a slightly higher recovery rate with the Verge Valet. Illegal dumping. One Hilton residents told me they started calling our suburb Tipton because it looked like a tip. And if you look at the stats in our report, there was an effort made by staff to not include duplicate reports in that reporting. We don't have the actual numbers, but they removed the duplicate reports. But the Clayton Gunning email that we all received that had 10, 12, I don't know how many different piles of rubbish, if that was even counted at all, that was only counted as one report. Folks that I spoke with in Hilton that did report piles of waste lying around illegally said that they had just given up. It started to feel like a part-time job to them. And I was, I told them, I said, no, you got to keep doing it. And they may pick up again, but I don't know. It was a lot of work on their end, but they just really felt like they had given up, which could also partially explain the drop-off because I haven't gone a week without seeing a pile of rubbish in my neighborhood. I don't know about you guys, but it's pretty much happens there all the time. So, if I'm looking back at the report that was presented to us, I also I think saying the Verge Valet is mitigating the causes and effects of climate change, to me feels like a bit of a stretch. I see the reuse with the Bring Out Your Dead model being significantly higher. The recovery rates are marginally better, maybe a little bit more than marginally better, but I'm not sure that that's any significance over the previous model. So if we look at what we're being asked, we've got a Verge Valet model that definitely costs more, whether it costs more per ton or just costs more, period. There is less reuse of items. There's more illegal dumping, whether you look at it, whether there's, how much is there or not. And literally, our community wants to bring out your dead. The post that I did yesterday was even shared down in South Fremantle on that little precinct page. And from what I could see is most of the comments there, when I checked, all the comments there were for going back to the old system. So, I think that, yes, we can all share stuff on Facebook and put things on there and have people come around and check out our Verge Valet pile. But there's really nothing that gets to the critical mass when people know this is the weekend to drive around and collect items off the Verge, repurpose them, share them. There's no way to get to that level of community interaction without doing it all at one time. Now, is there a mess during that 1 week? Absolutely. There absolutely is. But I find it interesting because I keep proposing that we just do an educational campaign to our residents about those issues. And that's a solution for Verge Valet, but that can't be a solution for the Bring Out Your Dead, apparently. So I'm 100% supportive of going back to the other model, doing an education campaign to help minimize the few residents who reported, that they were not satisfied with that model, and to make it the best that it can be. So hopefully, if we vote this down or we get to the alternate recommendation, like I said, I'll be adding an amendment to ensure that the residents in the CBD and areas like where Margaret and Ian Kerr live can continue to have a service, most likely skip bins, to make sure that because to me that seems like a much better solution. We shouldn't have the rest of the city sacrificing to provide a service. We can provide the service to the residents that don't have it and continue on with the service model that, as far as I'm concerned, pretty much 100% of the people out in our neck of the woods would like to see continue. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question that was raised, I think, if I'm correct, in my understanding? So previously, there wasn't waste separation when Verge Bring Out Your Dead happened, apart from what happened with people picking things. Verge Valet goes to WMRC. Do they then separate the various things that might be in the truck at that point into different waste streams? That's question one. And two, if a skip bin was used, would that also be separated in the same way?
Through the chair. So both the previous model and the current model had some degree of separation, as in recovery for recycling of the materials disposed. So basically, that happens at the sorting facility to which the materials are directed. So that going to the amounts of recovery that were achieved. So certainly that prior to Verge Valet implementation, we had a range in the previous years from 30% to the 43% of recovery, and we were able to increase it to 70%. So that's, I think, a significant increase. What was the other question? Sorry.
Are skip bins separated?
So skip bins, I believe, and in the context we had with other local councils, we've asked about that option as well. But it was found not to be a very practical option in terms of the flexibility of operation, and also associated with the additional costs with having the different bins, and also operational constraints associated with property sizes, verge sizes, and the bin placements, and so on.
All right. The question was whether things that go in the skip bin are separated at any point in the waste chain.
They could, in the same way in a sorting facility, yes.
All right. Sorry, Councillor Moughlin.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm fully supportive of the officer's recommendation and the continuation of the service, and there's a number of reasons for that, but primarily it's the alignment with our waste management plan, which this is a key action to be able to deliver on that. And if we are, we're 1 year into that program, and I don't really see any compelling case for us to throw it out. In fact, to the point that the officers were just making, we're seeing improvements in recovery rates, and importantly, that drop off of what we did term illegal dumping from those early months. So I suppose I have a different take on it to what Councillor Lorver has, and I also just really want to pick up on and talk about the cost element. Now, if we are looking at cost from how many tonnes we go and collect, yeah, we could go and encourage people to put out lots of waste, and we would have a really low cost per tonne for us. But that's not what we're looking to achieve. That's not the outcome we're looking to achieve. We're looking to avoid waste generation. We're looking to increase recovery. And sometimes, in that sense, we're paying for a different service. We're not paying for collection of tonnes and tonnes of waste. We're paying for a service that delivers avoidance and recovery. And I think what we're seeing in the early stages of the Verge Valet program is an improvement in that. And I think it should be allowed to run for a longer period of time to continue to improve that. And I think I would also encourage staff as part of that program to look for opportunities for continuous improvement on the program. And I have, certainly had feedback from residents that they have enjoyed being able to book a time which works for them, as opposed to, finding 1 week in the year where they've had to accumulate waste over a period of time and then bring it out in that fashion. We, personally, I used the Verge Valet system, and by the time it came to being collected, there was half the material that we had put out on the Verge left for the collection. It had been scavenged and collected, and I was more than happy with the service. So I'm fully supportive of the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Lang.
Just a question, actually. The thing that really strikes me in the data that we've got is the differential in the tonnes collected on the old model and the new model. It was 1,200 tonnes previously, if that data's right, and then under the new model it was around 400 tonnes. Is that, I don't know, there's lots of, the numbers keep changing, but broadly speaking, it's about 1,200 and 400 tonnes collected under the. So the question I keep asking myself is, where on earth has all of that waste gone? It is triple the amount we collected. Do the officers have any idea? Are people just hoarding it in their backyard still, or are they putting it in their bins? Have we got any data to try to understand why the collection rate is so much lower under the Verge Valet than previously?
Perhaps if officers can address that, and I think there might be some issue around financial year and timing, comparing apples and apples. Is that right?
Yes. So the amount is not 1,200. It's about 880. So the correct figure. But the fundamental aspect of the question was about what happens to that waste. So the previous system, Bring Out Your Dead, was opportunistic in the sense that giving people the opportunity to just throw things out, they took that opportunity. Now, for one reason or another, they keep it because they don't see the need to basically get rid of it. They might reuse it properly, or they might donate it. There might be another different, all sorts of different things that might happen. We don't know. We're not aware exactly what are the different components of that decision, what they do with that material, because it does not become waste as such. So, and we only deal with waste. And also, we provide the opportunity when booking for the user to have access to resources in terms of locating charities or other or Facebook groups that they can donate the materials to. So all sorts of different decisions might be made in terms of reuse of those materials.
Does that help you, Councillor Lang?
Kind of. We don't really know is the answer. And it was leading on to where I wanted to go with my position on this item. I'm really on the fence with this one. I think a lot of the points that Councillor Lorber raised are right. When there is the bulk, bring out your dead, I know that, and I'm not talking about recycling, it's the reuse element that I really like about the bulk recycling, and I commend Councillor Lorber for I saw the efforts you did to provide furniture to people in the Kimberley. That was really commendable. Yeah, it's the reuse element, and we don't have much data on any of this actually, which makes it really hard to form a position. But anecdotally, you would say that more is reused in the bulk waste because people do make a concerted effort to go around and sift through things more, and the likelihood of them finding something like a scrap of wood or a bit of tin and taking it home and making something, I would say is higher. So the reuse element there, I do appreciate that more. But as Councillor Moughlin said as well, I've also witnessed people scavenging through the Burge Valley piles, so things are getting reused there too. The question that I struggle with is this ginormous gulf in waste previously to now, where is it? Is it still accumulating in backyards? Will that volume go up as people adopt the Burge Valley system more in the future? They might. So that's why I'm encouraged to see this continue for maybe a year or something, and perhaps we'll have more data on the volume being collected from Burge Valley, and that might come up in parallel. Or, as the officers have suggested, maybe people are looking for other avenues to recycle or reuse. So it is a tough one because we just don't have any data on it.
Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thank you. Look, I want to start with a comment that Councillor Lorber made in terms of that this isn't going to mitigate climate change, and I think it sums it up in some ways. Obviously, this isn't going to mitigate climate change, but I think what is so important and great about this system is more that it encourages connection with the idea that nothing ever really disappears, and it encourages this connection that waste is something that we should be thinking about as consumers in a way that the Bring Out Your Dead scheme I don't think really does, because it is opportunistic, as we've heard from officers tonight. And I guess it's an opportunity to think, oh, I've just put it out there, maybe someone will take it, or maybe, out of sight, out of mind. The Burge Valley means that people are thinking about where their waste is going, and whilst that isn't going to solve climate change, it also helps us think about our connection to the environment in a way that I don't think Bring Out Your Dead does, although I understand your points of reuse. And I do appreciate the unknowns. I mean, there's more unknowns than knowns in terms of where our waste is going. But I also find issue with the conclusion that the unknowns mean that there's less reuse. The unknowns may well mean that there's increased reuse. We just can't see that. The program encourages a pre-sort, whether or not that pre-sort means that those reusable items go maybe on a Virgin be scavenged before Burge Valley comes, or maybe they go to the tip shop or the op shop or a friend or marketplace. I feel that the similar facts can draw a very different conclusion with whether or not there's increased or reduced reuse. And similarly, in my experience, when there is Bring Out Your Dead, many items may go on the verge with the hope that someone will pick it up. But potentially there's rain or something happens and those items are broken or they're ruined, and potentially, I don't know whether or not that's why there's less waste, but that was the thought that I had. So I think that's really my main points, but I was thankful also for Councillor Moughlin to bring up the cost. This is a different service to what there was before. It's not apples and apples. I do think that this is a great and successful service, so I will be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Williams-Wong. Councillor Archibald.
Thank you. I reiterate some of the comments being made. I think there has been a lot of, people getting used to a new system. This is only 9 months. It's not a full year yet, and I do feel that we need to continue the service and keep analysing it and looking at ways in which we can improve it. I just want to make a couple of comments. I do know that some neighbours are collaborating because they don't have enough for one big verge dump out, so they share it with their neighbours, and then another neighbour down the track will be wanting to do one, and they'll share it around too. So there are fewer people thinking, I need to book one just for me. They're collaborating, which is a great outcome. A lot of people are still putting materials out on their verge with the hope that someone will take it away without even booking a verge valet. I mean, this is anything that they think might be recyclable, they're putting it out, and very often it disappears. Certainly Whitegum Valley disappears pretty quickly, and people also put posts on Facebook to let people know that it's out there on the verge, and come and get it if they want to. So there's quite a few things that seem to be happening out there in the community that are encouraging people to pick up anything that might be usable, recyclable. In reference to climate change, one of the things that always horrified me was the volume of stuff that was put out in the verge free-for-all. It just shocks me that so much of it is just, wasted. There it all goes, it goes out, it's dumped. If people aren't thinking twice about putting stuff out and continuing to use it, I think that's great. I think it's a really positive sign. The other thing that I really wouldn't want to see is people feeling like, well, it's all going to the waste to energy plant or something, because that's just a kind of cop-out. It's just a way of, okay, we don't need to be responsible for this anymore. It can all just go and be burnt, So what we really can't deal with, yes, take it to the waste to energy plant. But I think we've got to stop thinking that we can just keep replacing everything just because we can go and get a new one and it makes us all feel great. So I really do support this continuing. I don't think 9 months is long enough. I think we also need to learn what our community is doing out there and understand better, how they feel about it and what we can do to help. And I would much rather see this continue and be more attentive to what is working and what is not working before we ever make a decision to go back to the old system. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Archibald. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll start with that issue about that Councillor Lang has brought up about where does the missing rubbish go? Where does the missing waste go? Well, that's an interesting one because that's the same question that is asked by all of the councils that have implemented Verge Valet. All of them have noticed this reduction in waste being put out, and indeed, that was actually one of the reasons when we looked at it originally why we thought it was a good idea. So, and I note, for example, that the City of Vincent just recently, in August, have finished their trial and have resolved to keep going with the Verge Valet. Councillor Lorver raised a couple of issues really, and the first one was cost. And I just remind Council that the decision we made in relation to Verge Valet was never about cost. In fact, I don't think we even really discussed cost. It was about doing the right thing by the environment, and it was also about improving resource recovery through better service and better separation, increased efficiency, reducing opportunity for wasteful behaviour, and in fact, providing a customer-focused service. A customer-focused service, not just a general one-fits-all service. So, and what we were looking at was community concerns about amenity, reducing illegal dumping, improved resource recovery, and the need for a more efficient and tailored service. So in all of those, apart from perhaps the issue of illegal dumping, which is arguable, I mean, I have my views on that, um, we have achieved all of those from the report. So it was never, as I said, it was never about cost. And indeed, even the comparison of the cost of what it cost us to do the Bring Out Your Dead, from memory, when we signed that contract, it was probably 5 years ago, maybe 6, I forget. And we got that contract at a very good rate. In fact, we got such a good rate that when we were thinking about doing the Verge Valley, we extended the contract with that service provider. And on the same conditions. So that was 5 years ago, and that was a 4+1 and then an extra year. So the question I would have is if we were to go back, and maybe this is a question I would ask the director, is if we were indeed to think about going back to a Bring Out Your Dead service, would in fact the cost be similar or less than what we're currently paying for a Verge Valley service?
Director.
Thank you, through the chair. You're probably right. The rate that we had previously was very good pre-COVID. I would expect there's escalation on that if we went back out to market now. I couldn't say without actually testing the market what we'd be looking at in terms of the levels, but I would have assumed would be very similar, approaching the same as the Verge Valley service, but that'll be subject to market testing.
Okay, if I could continue then. So given that the issue of cost, A, was not a concern of ours in the first place, and B, if we decided to go away from the Verge Valley, it is fairly likely that the cost would be similar, if not more, given that also they would look at the tonnages and tender on the tonnages we used to pick up. The other issue that Councillor Lorber brought up was all the people who want to go back to Bring Out Your Dead. Asking people on Facebook, I think that's an ideal way of doing it. Certainly, what I would say is that in the conversations that I've had in North Ward, I don't have anybody knocking on my door or when I talk to them saying that it's a good idea to go back. And in fact, reinforced, I went down to Kwinana yesterday, just as an aside, I went down to Kwinana yesterday. They are a week or 10 days behind their Verge pickup, and the place just reminds me what some of our streets used to look like when they Bring Out Your Dead. I do not want to go back to that, I can tell you that. So really, I think the 40% to 70% is in itself, the recovery rate from 40% to 70% in itself is a reason for us, a good reason for us to, in fact, carry on with the Verge Valley. And again, how do you quantify the environmental effects? Well, that's the only way we have it is through the stats, 40% to 70% recovery rate of recyclable. So, yeah, I would have a lot of I don't agree with the points put forward by Councillor Lover, and I would urge you to support the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Lover, you have a question?
Yes, I do. And it's about that recovery rate, because the Bring Out Your Dead was one truck scooping everything up, chucking it in the back and taking it somewhere. The Verge Valley is one truck coming out, scooping everything up, chucking it in the back, taking it somewhere. So I guess I'm just curious, why does the truck with the Verge Valley have such a higher recovery rate when the process to get it to where it's going is virtually identical? Or is there a different process with the Verge Valley and getting it to where it's going that increases that recovery rate?
Director or the manager? Yep.
Through the chair. So to be clear, there for the mattresses, that's a separate collection. So, but yes, all the rest is collected in the same truck. So the difference is in the processing facility. So Verge Valley is operated by WMRC, whose sorting facility operates at that level of separation efficiency that we've been talking about. So the 70% is what they achieved. Whereas the previous contractors, by virtue of the subcontractors that they've used, don't achieve that. And that's the primary reason.
So if those contractors that did the Bring Out Your Dead drove their trucks to the facility that Verge Valet, they would get the same recovery rate?
But potentially, but I don't know commercially if they have that ability or not, or the specifics of their arrangements in terms of the collection that might not meet the specifications of acceptance criteria for the facility. I don't know. So that's a question that we cannot really respond to with accurate information.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you. I was in two minds when we agreed to do Verge Valet. I know that the community I represent, there is probably a stronger desire to have the Bring Out Your Dead, but I also recognise that it depends on your demographic. It depends on the type of dwelling that you live in. It depends on the size of the verge that you have. It depends on all sorts of things, and it's not a one size fits all. So there are always going to be people who prefer. You know, we talk about customer focus. There are absolutely in the kind of higher socioeconomic group a mob of people that will basically say, I prefer the personalised service. I prefer to organise myself and do it that way. I don't want to be out there with all the masses, you know, chucking out my stuff on the Bring Out Your Dead day. On the matter, I mean, this is a bowl of fruit in terms of data. It's not just apples and oranges. It's the whole grocery store in terms of data, and it is very hard to pick through. Harder to pick through than the rubbish on the verge, and it's really impossible to get conclusive, certainly in my mind, as to what is the quantities that get recycled, i.e. broken down, and you know the material gets recycled, and that's great, versus the things that are reusable and actually get reused and given a second life or a third life. And so it is really difficult to actually get an understanding about the volumes. But if people are putting less out, I can only anticipate that they're hoarding more. There is, of course, the prospect that they are taking more of it to our facility, our tip facility. But I've done that. I've done that twice this year, so I know I'm doing that. The problem with doing that, of course, is I loaded all on my trailer, and I've already got 2 parking fines because you can't park a trailer in the street in Fremantle. But the reality is, when I got to the tip shop, the vast majority of what I thought would be reused was, no, just chuck that in the skip. And there are lots of things in that which were just small, inexpensive kind of elements that I'm confident that if I'd put them out on my verge, they probably would have got reused by somebody. And so that it does worry me that this tendency will be that more stuff ends up going into the rubbish areas. And a lot of the stuff that I tried to get rid of properly and hoped would get reused was those sort of things which you can't break down individually into materials, so they don't go into the individual bins that you get to put out there. They go straight into a skip for landfill. So for me, that was incredibly frustrating. The community certainly do enjoy, I think, the the bring out your dead, but it depends where you are. One of the comments that was made, well, people shouldn't be, there's this sense that a bring out your dead is just a more wasteful society. It just encourages people to waste. It's like, oh yeah, we'll just throw it all out. I get the completely different impression every time I go to any area that's bring out your dead. What it tells me, and I presume it tells some other people, is that the sort of crap that you buy at Bunnings and other places that lasts for 3 seconds, and that even when you put it out on your verge, nobody takes because they go, oh yeah, that's one of those really crap pieces of furniture that you can't even, burn as firewood. Then it encourages people, hopefully, to think twice next time when they buy that Christmas present or that cheap piece of outdoor furniture or those wonderful aluminium tables with the glass tops. That perhaps there are better ways to purchase things. The last thing I would say is that, and I said it the other night, there is, in my view, there must be ways of using a bring out your dead and actually still doing some forms of verge valet. So for things like mattresses, to me, should always be verge valet. I mean, they're actually complicated. They complicate things when you have mattresses on the same day as you bring out your dead. So for me, mattresses should just be, you ring up, you go, look, I've got a mattress or 3. Can you book me in? We know that the mattress trucks goes around and goes to 10 places or 20 places or 30 places on that day. And it's a very efficient system when it's done that way. There are probably the private sector of, we know that a lot of the op shops will actually come out and pick up good furniture. And we should be finding ways for, if you have something that is genuinely recyclable, something that you didn't buy at Bunnings, that you can actually ring up St. Pat's or any of the other op shops and actually get them to come out and collect it. And we also know that the marketplace, marketplace free buy it kind of sites are really, really good places to do a virtual version of the Bring Out Your Dead. So I'm not convinced that the valet service is doing what our community wants in terms of bringing out all of your unwanted goods. So I'm a little bit, but I'm not necessarily 100% that we just go back to the old system as well. As I said, I would prefer us to find ways of doing certain things better, but also having the capacity for a perhaps more restrained version of a Bring Out Your Dead system. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors? There's a couple of you haven't spoken. Maybe you're not going to. That's fine. All right. So in closing, I think we do have to be really cautious of this community engagement via Facebook. And I note that Councillor Lorber referenced the post he put up. It said a few things that I think probably did get people's attention, like is over 4 times the Bring Out Your Dead model per tonne in cost. So that would have been probably quite attention grabbing. It also referenced the idea there'd been a significant increase in the number of reported illegal dumping this past year. Of course, the graph in the report shows that that's dropped back down to normal after the education campaign. And of course, what was being counted as illegal dumping was a bunch of people doing copycat when they saw someone else putting out their stuff for Verge Valet and assumed it was Bring Out Your Dead time. So not the sort of illegal dumping I think that we've traditionally referred to, which refers to people fly dumping and things like that through the suburbs when they see that there is a collection underway. So yeah, I imagine it did get quite significant attention. I think it's clear that it's, while not necessarily a cost decision, as Councillor Thompson so rightly said, it's always been a waste recovery or a landfill avoidance decision. We also know that the costs are not 4 times the Bring Out Your Dead model by any stretch of the imagination. it also serves more people and serves them better. And I think that's the other part when we assess the cost is we don't want to be doing that based on the same number of properties being served. So we've got to be very careful with that. A couple of things have happened as well since this model went in place. I mean, I think the point around things going on the verge, they still go on the verge. So Councillor Sullivan may in fact have been better to put those items on the verge and book a verge valet so that those people down the road who very much wanted that item that was rejected by the tip shop had that day or so to pick it up. People do definitely still pick stuff up off people's verges as part of Verge Valet. And if anything, the fact that people are educated about how to put things on their verges in a way that people can actually see them as opposed to the traditional sort of mountains of stuff is a good thing. And of course, it markets the other options first. So things like the St. Pat's community shop, where people who are fitting out a house for the first time since coming out of homelessness are able to go and get an entire house fit out for free from St. Pat's. I mean, those places are very happy to come and pick things up from your home if they can be reused, and I think that's a great thing. We've also got the Good Sammy bags now, and I think so you would have seen certainly Hilton. There was a Good Sammy bag on every verge the other, or every front door, or wherever they were told. I missed it, but and that again is another process of education where people know what goes in that bag. It has to be of quality. It has to, So previously with the Bring Out Your Dead model, there were clothes strewn everywhere, and often that hid what was other good stuff on the verge. House move-outs have always been a problem. The issue about, when someone's moving out of a home, they don't care whether it's Bring Out Your Dead or not. They just want to bring out their dead and get out of there. And it's very hard to get them for illegal dumping after they've left the neighbourhood. But the Verge Valet service very much targets that. And of course, that used to have all the copycat behaviours that went with it. We're never going to get perfect metrics on this. That was the other sort of point, I think Councillor Sullivan's point about a bowl of fruit. It's impossible to measure what we don't touch. We only know what comes through our trucks, our facilities, our hands. So we can wait forever for data, but we're never going to get, data. I think the experience of other councils and the research I think that was done even when we were looking at this around behaviour change and education is the bit that's most valuable in this. And if it does result in less stuff going to landfill, maybe it's in people's backyards, but maybe it's gone via Marketplace, maybe it's in the St. Pat's shop. Maybe they've decided to get it fixed, which would be a wonderful thing at the Repair Cafe down every second Sunday or whatever it is. So I think Councillor Williamson-Wong's point that you shouldn't make assumptions in the negative. The assumptions could well be the same way in the positive is a really good one. So we'll put this one to a vote. All those in favour? And against? Councillors Sullivan and Law are against, and that's carried. All right, so that's going to bring us to tender award for Bathers Beach. Someone want to move the officer's recommendation, or I'm happy to. Councillor Archibald, and I'll second that. I wanted to move an amendment just to reflect the ongoing engagement with the business. So if there's no debate, I'll move that amendment, and seconded by Councillor Thompson. Really, I guess, as I understand it, the businesses down there have wanted to see us get to this point before they make a firm commitment, which is probably fair enough. So it's just reflecting the fact that that conversation will continue to happen now that we've had the opportunity to consider this. Okay. Anything on that? Put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. And back to the item as amended. Cool. Councillor Lorber.
Yeah, I just want to comment. Like, if I share information about this or any item on Facebook, it's usually based on the information that's provided in the reports by officers. So if I put something out there, it's based upon the information that's provided to us. So if I'm going to say something about the SharkNet, and that will be based upon the information in the report. That information in the report isn't accurate. Well, I can't help that. So thank you.
On the safe swimming area, I guess I just wanted to take a minute to say thanks to officers who progressed this really, really quickly, while still going through all of the necessary tender processes. I think probably elected members would have noticed that there was a change from what the original sort of proposed cost was to what the cost is now, and I don't know if officers wanted to make a quick comment on how that reduction has been achieved. Did you want to? You can go to the mic there if you want, Ron. Might be easier.
Thank you through the chair. I guess the original cost estimates were based on a request for information that was put out to the market when we were looking at the feasibility of the project. That was based on two, I suppose, manufacturers or proponents at the time. When we put the request for tender out, we received three proposals, and that third proposal wasn't one which we got one, I suppose, based the original information on, and their I suppose capital cost of installation and net manufacture was a bit cheaper.
Thank you. And as far as I understand, we believe we can get this in the warm summer months. Is that correct?
Correct, thank you. Yeah, I guess that's why we've really pushed to get this one through into council for endorsement. If we can get the award happening in the next week or so, with manufacturing lead times, we should have it in the back end of summer.
Great, thank you. All right, if there's no further comment, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Sorry. Ah, there you are. Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. Too quick. Yes, against. So everyone other than Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Sullivan against, and that is fine. All right. Might just have a quick look at the agenda and see if anyone wants to speak on C items 11, 12 or 14. Yeah, did you wish to?
I would like to speak on item 11, please.
Okay, so we'll keep item 11, 12 and 14, and actually the statutory reports maybe as well. Just wondering if I can do 12, 14 and the statutory reports en bloc. Yep, Councillor Lang, you seem to be moving those en bloc, and seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favour? That's unanimous. That's 12, 14, 16, 17, 18. Okay, back to C241011, the road naming, moved by Councillor Williamson Wong, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Councillor Williamson Wong.
Thank you. I endeavour to be brief. I just wanted to say that I am very supportive of these names going up, and I'm thankful for the applicant for bringing them to us. Interestingly, had a conversation with someone and we were talking about other Noongar words that we use all the time in our language that we don't think about as being Noongar words. Nanup, which has meant camp. Kojonup, place of the stone axe. Quite scary, but nonetheless. Quokka, which is the same, quokka. And Gidji, which comes from the Noongar word Gidjiborl, which is essentially the same item. And I think it's really great for us to be able to have access to language that has been here for far, far longer than us, and to have opportunities to learn. I think even in the last few years, we've all learnt the meanings of kaya or budja, even Kadajin or kulbadi or chitty chitty, which is the willy wagtail, and the ways in which we interact with language is really important, and yeah, very excited for this.
Thank you. I'll put that one to a vote then. All those in favour? And against? I think that was unanimous. Yep. Okay. Struggling to see. Anyway. All right. That brings us to Beach Street. So did somebody wish to move a motion? There's the officer's recommendation, moved by Councillor Archibald, seconded by Councillor Mofflin or Kamada? Moved too quickly, Mofflin. All right, Councillor Archibald, did you want to open on this one or just leave it?
Sorry, yes, I've just got to get I had it open and then somehow it got closed. I just wanted to, I just wanted to mention that we did get an email um, which has some additional information, which wasn't um, in the agenda that was circulated. And I think it's quite important because it does just clarify the work that the officers had done on this. Um, Here it is. So I thought just for the benefit of anybody who might be listening online or, that this information is put into the space. So that it was from the Heritage Coordinator of Council, and she says, I can confirm that 5 Beach Street is not heritage protected. It is not on the heritage list and is not part of the heritage area. 5 Beach Street does make a limited contribution to the industrial character of Beach Street, but unfortunately it has been so compromised physically and structurally by the previous owner that we now support the new owner's request to demolish the facade. This opinion is backed up by a structural report provided by the new owners, St Patrick's, which demonstrates that it is beyond retention. So I just wanted to put that into space because I wasn't too sure how I really felt about this, but I do know that St Pat's will make extremely good use of this site. It is only going to consolidate their capability to deal with some of the issues that we would like to see dealt with in our community and to provide a really vibrant extended facility for people who need to have the services of St Pat's. So I felt when on reading that I would have no hesitation in supporting the officer's recommendation. I feel like the cost of retaining a facade is quite it's not insignificant, and it would also mean that they don't have the freedom to design a building which is going to be as suitable for them as they can possibly make it. And raising funds is always a very critical issue for them. So I will be supporting the officer's recommendation on this particular item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Archibald. Councillor Lorber?
Yeah, this is one that I wouldn't mind having a little more time to kind of consider, possibly flag a deferral on this for the next, so we can bring it to the planning committee or the pseudo planning committee meeting in the next couple weeks. Because I do seem to recall that when this was brought to us before, there was a heritage component to it. And I appreciate what Councillor Archibald just said about the staff now have reconsidered that. But for me personally, I would like a little more time to unpack that. And without a DA in front of us and without, really a huge sense of urgency to knock this down in the next 2 weeks, I just personally think a deferral would be a really good way to go, just to make certain that, for me personally, that I'm across what was said previously, what's been put before us now, and then also maybe even go down and have a look myself. So I'll just flag that a deferral would be something that I would be enthusiastically supportive, and I'll just let the rest of the debate happen.
Councillor Moughlin?
Thanks. And maybe to address Councillor Lorber's point, question for officers, just around the reason when this did come to council previously for the demolition, that the facade was recommended to be maintained retained as part of that demolition.
Yep. Director Planning.
Thank you. Through the chair, not fully understanding the question.
I can clarify. So when the decision was made last time, what were the reasons for retaining the facade?
Thank you. Through the chair, as a last-ditch attempt to try and retain it, noting that it didn't have heritage listing then, arguably probably fairly thin legal grounds to require it to be retained. It's not protected under the scheme, so not clear what head of power would come into play. It was very much an idea of it would be good to keep it. because of its contribution to streetscape. The heritage opinion hasn't actually changed. That was our in-house opinion back in February, before the building order was put out, that it would be good to see if we can retain it because of that contribution to streetscape and what that building edge does in terms of illustrate the function of the port, and the maritime heritage with the city heritage. It's a really important interface. We're going to have that with the Woolsthorpe building as well. So it's a very important line to get right. But it didn't have any inherent heritage significance, and our understanding is it doesn't today.
May I ask a follow-on question to that? At the point of the last assessment, did we have the structural information and heritage, the consultant's report that we do have now?
Through the chair, we did have a previous structural report, which was questioning the integrity, but the two reports that have more recently been commissioned provide far greater detail on that. The claim that it is unfeasible to keep that facade.
Councillor Mofton, did you want to follow on?
Thanks. Yeah. So yeah, based on that and the information presented to us, and it certainly feels more like it was a nice to have and something that we would be good for us to look at maintaining if we could. But yeah, I'm fully supportive of the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Lang?
It's a question. What we voted on earlier in the year, the first much was written much like this, except the sentence was whilst preserving the existing historic facade. So we were referring to it as a historic facade, and we attached a heritage report earlier in the year for the exact same application for demolition. And then this report's come back, and we're not referring to historic facade anymore. I'm curious why we've dropped the term historic from being in front of facade, and why we didn't actually attach any heritage information to this report when we did last time. What's changed to completely overlook all the heritage information?
Can I get the director to respond to that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's the heritage opinion hasn't changed. It hasn't been heritage listed. A full assessment wasn't done in April. There was a referral, you're quite right, referring to historic facade, which is a value that you look at when you're looking at cultural significance. So you look at heritage, you look at social, look at rarity as per Borough Charter. When you look at it in totality, you come up with a statement of significance that says it might have some or limited or very high cultural value. That piece of work has not been done. In fact, it's got to a point where our heritage experts, including Alan Kelso, I'd like to add, believe it is past that point where you can determine it's got that cultural significance. So yes, of course, it's got heritage, it's old, but that doesn't mean necessarily it has cultural significance that would get it listed onto within the planning scheme. That would mean you need to protect it. It's old, it's historic, and that is where it sort of ends.
Do you wish to follow on from there, Councillor?
Another question. Yeah, obviously I've been speaking with those experts as well myself, and with the lack of a detailed research and my own Googling, that's what I'm relying on. I found that the site may have been owned or potentially built by the first mayor of Fremantle. That's the information I could find. Do you know anything about that at all?
No, I don't. It's possibly not embodied in the fabric of that building. That piece of history would remain in place even if there was demolition and subsequent buildings put in place. That history still is there.
All right. Look, I might speak on this one now. I mean, I guess what we've got in front of us is that this site has been acquired by someone who, has genuine plans to do something with it. But right now they have a significant issue on their hands, which is an unsafe and structurally problematic site. And You know, I think given we know the line of work St Pat's is in, the idea of trying to maintain this facade in redeveloping the site, the costs that that would add, and effectively when we're adding costs to something being done by St Pat's, we may as well frame it as, you know, removing support for homelessness, because all the costs that have to go into retaining a facade are costs that otherwise would go into building new accommodation or services or supports for people experiencing homelessness. So physically looking at this site and having a close look at it, you know, you can see with very unexpert eyes just how challenging it would be to A, maintain that facade, but B, develop the site behind it while maintaining that facade. I don't even begin to understand how one might do that, given that the facade is A, right at the front, and B, structurally very questionable. So the urgency, I think, from St Pat's perspective would be to manage the risks associated with this site. We know that there have been consistent, you know, people accessing this site over time and at a significant risk. And if I were the owner of this site, I would be extremely worried about that, that going on. And to really open up the possibility then for a conversation with the various funding partners about the new uses of this site, and in the context of the redevelopment that's now funded for the Greater St Pat's facility down there, community hub. So I wouldn't support a deferral on the basis that I don't know what information we're going away and getting. I think we've got the information we've got our heritage, the information that was supplied to us from Gina today. I kind of don't know what we'd be achieving through a deferral. We've had an opportunity to go see the site. It's been on the agenda all week. Michael Pugh's emailed people, I think, to say he's welcome to answer happy to answer any questions. Just not sure what we'd achieve through that. So, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. This is a really hard one, and it does deserve a good debate. It's very clear in my mind why the subtle change from April to now, and it really comes down to ownership and future purpose. So we could pretend it's something else, but that's, in my view, why there is a change. But for me, as someone that's been heavily involved in heritage for a very long time, I have to satisfy myself, go through a process bit by bit to try and understand whether or not we should be considering parts of the fabric of that site to have either some or more heritage value, conservation value, or none or limited. And it can be that it did have, for example, some or more in the past, and that its condition now is that it may now have none or limited. So that's really what this conversation is about. In 2000, before the DA was lodged for this site, the Municipal Heritage Inventory process identified that this had potential heritage value. And then in 2003, I'm assuming at the time of the development application, it was assessed, it was reported that the place held cultural heritage significance for its aesthetic value as a warehouse, both individually and as part of a collection of warehouses in that area. So quite clearly, people were in the past recognising that a part of this complex may have or possibly did have heritage significance. But of course, that was part of the DA, and that was before any works were done. And obviously the hope was that in approving the development application, that heritage would be both protected and ideally enhanced. So the question is, by 2009, it was quite clear that it had been not enhanced, it had actually been eroded. Um, what was clear was that the structural bracing of the facade was successful. There is a report in previous reports that basically says actually it's stable by the works that have been done there. The difficulty with that is we're talking about demolishing the very works that make it stable. So there is that concern as to how the hell you go about doing that. But in 2009, when we were, I think, beginning the process of taking legal action against the previous owners, or the owner before the previous owners, I think, it was decided not to, council decided, or the officers decided not to include it in our heritage list. And as part of the new city planning scheme. And my suspicion, and it's actually stated at the time, that the reasons were because of the damage, but also because we were taking action. So there's this sort of like, well, taking action against the person who's done the damage is not an actual valid reason for not including something in a heritage list, whereas perhaps is it completely beyond salvageability? Perhaps is a reason for not including it in the list. So there was a little bit, in my view, of it's kind of like hedging your bets, bringing into the conversation aspects that weren't relevant, which is also the same with bringing into the conversation who owns the land. In 2010, there was a view expressed in reports that there was a permanent loss of value of the place. It had occurred. It wasn't up to scratch. But subsequently, even in our reports that are presented by our officers, I think there is still an acceptance that there is the potential for the cultural significance to be there. And it's such a hard one because, you know, I know that if you take money off the table, I know that you can keep that facade. I know that will make demolition of the rest of the building significantly more expensive. I know that it will probably make building the new building significantly more expensive because of the ability just to get into a clean site. You know, all of a sudden you've only got two little entrances, makes it hard to build, makes it bloody hard to demolish. So there is that question, but that's not the question you have to answer yourself first. The first one you have to answer is, does it still have some cultural significance? And, you know, my gut feeling that the extent of damage that's been done to it is actually compensated by the extent of propping up that has also been done to it. So there's a little bit of sort of taking away. Yeah, the windows in the very top are ridiculous, but they're incredibly easy to change. There's a dunny pipe that runs down the front wall. That would be relatively easy to fix. So for me, the damage and the integrity of the facade being more stable is sort of balanced out. So for me, I actually do think it still has cultural significance. I think it should have been listed a long time ago. I wish it had been listed back in 2000. It might have actually given us even more weight when we were dealing with the rogue builder at the time in 2009. But that's just my view, and I will absolutely accept that other people will form a different view as to whether it has none or limited or some or more. If it's got some or more, we shouldn't be letting it be demolished.
Right. Councillors, Councillor Lorva, you've spoken.
Yep, I'd just like to move a deferral.
Okay, do we have a seconder for a deferral? Councillor Lang? All those, Councillor Kamadi, are you in or out of the room?
Well,
we're about to vote, so maybe just if you can hang around.
Well, I'm going to speak to the deferral, so.
Do we speak to deferrals?
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Great.
You
Yeah,
please,
so
Matt.
I think that this has enough questions that giving it another 2 weeks is going to be a really smart decision on our part. You know, I'm not happy with being characterized. If you vote against this, you're voting against homelessness services. I'm not, and if you vote for it, you're voting to support homelessness services. I'm not happy with that characterization of this vote. So I'd like to move the deferral and give us some more time to really investigate and figure out what if there is some or more heritage value there, and then how we might be able to incorporate that into the plans. So,
Are officers comfortable they've captured the reasons for deferral? Okay. All right. All those in favour of a deferral? Councillors Lang, Lorva, that's all. And against? So that's lost. All right, so back to the item. Councillor Williamson Wong.
Thank you. I take Councillor Lawford's point. If we take homelessness services out of it, which I do believe is an incredibly great use of that land, but if we remove that, I wonder whether there will be anyone who comes along who doesn't try and put this to us, because as we've heard, it's a completely structurally unsafe facade, and I don't see. I mean, this site has sat empty for longer than I've been alive, as far as I'm aware. Whether or not that's going to change if we say that the facade has to be there, I'm not sure. And I just wanted to say, in terms of cultural significance, from my experience, the site has more cultural significance as being a place of graffiti and illegal trespassing than it does in other ways. Whether or not it's had different cultural significance or historical significance before, that is not what I'm saying. I'm just pointing that out, and that's really all from me.
Thank you. Councillors, Councillor Van Dawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just firstly, I'd like to say that I support the officer's recommendation and Mayor Fitzharding's comments. I second those. I just wanted to make the point that if we don't support this tonight, the reality is the project for St Pat's, their development, will very, very likely become unfeasible. While that's not our decision tonight, that's the reality. With an unfeasible project means it doesn't progress, which means the site is vacant for however long until they decide what to do with it or resell it, and then the next buyer comes up with a proposal who will come back with the same proposal to demolish it, at which point it will be in worse condition, and I think it would be very difficult for us to then say retain it. So, you know, I just wanted to make that point, that I think if this, whilst there may be individuals feeling that there is cultural heritage values in this property, it isn't heritage listed, and we've had opportunity to heritage list it as a council. Yeah, anyway, I would support, at least this way we get a good development outcome and real community benefit. We know St Pat's are a good provider and will deliver community benefit to Fremantle. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lang.
Everyone's touched on it. Yeah, we know St Pat's is the applicant, and that is, I do feel that puts me in a rock and a hard place, because as I actually spoke to the applicant about this, they made contact and said that absolutely their #1 fan, but also a big fan of the heritage fabric of Fremantle. That's why we're in a rock and a hard place here. My first question would be a minor amendment. Would consider having including the front historic facade as we did on it last time. Could we put that word back in as a minor amendment?
Don't think that feels minor. I think the applicant would have
I
wanted
figured
due
everyone would say
process.
as much, but I was just testing the room because that's what we voted on a couple of months ago. Nothing's changed. I just want to remind everyone in the room as well that I'm just looking at this as the demolition of the facade. It's not about St Pat's. And we've been here before a couple of years ago on the Spicer site. We had an applicant that was ready to build a hotel straight away. They needed to remove a heritage wall straight away. We said, yep, let's go and do it. I don't think I voted for it though. I don't think I supported it. I wanted to see a bit more of the hotel development come along. and they went and demolished the Warm Spicer car park and built a bigger car park and then leased it to Wilson's. Not suggesting St Pat's would do that, but I'm just reminding the room that we've been demolishing heritage bit by bit, week by week in council meetings, and we're just slowly chipping away at that fabric in Fremantle. And this is just another example that's coming before us at the moment. In terms of the viability of the site, we don't know what it will cost to repair the wall or hold it up, or even in an example where if we did a heritage survey and we had our own independent engineering survey done, again, like we did in 2020, reading the 2020 report, it says the structure is stable. If we had another one of those reports done and a proper heritage survey done, maybe there's a solution where part of the wall could be saved rather than this option is 100% for demolition. But we won't know. We don't actually know the full heritage of the site. I mean, my Googling suggested it may have been built by the first mayor of Fremantle. We don't know. At the moment, we're just on track for full demolition. And as we say, not suggesting St Pat to do that, but once it's a cleared site, as mentioned earlier tonight, it's a valuable site. They could do something else with it or sell it or who knows what. But anyway, once the heritage gone, it's gone. I would have hoped the deferral got up so we had an opportunity to do another survey for heritage and an opportunity to do another independent report. But here we are. So I support St Pat's, but on this item, I can't support demolition of the heritage front facade.
Councillor Graham?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. Look, just briefly, having known this site for so long and actually having known the owner that's put us through all this grief from many, many years ago, he did everything illegal on this site except pull down the facade. That would have saved this council a lot of anguish over the last nearly 30 years now. So, but look, and I'm not looking at this from a St Pat's point of view, but this building has run its race. Whatever, we've got the illegal stuff at the back. The facade, in my view, and everyone else has got a different view, and I appreciate that, is it's a blight on the streetscape at the moment, and I don't think you could mostly ever get it back to any recognisable site that's going to provide any, satisfaction to anyone, and I really don't think it's going to be missed anyway. So whether it's St Pat's or Twiggy building a hotel there, it's mostly time for it to go.
All right, sounds like we're ready to put this one to a vote. So all those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Councillors Thompson, Van Dawson, Williamson, Wong, myself, Kamada, Councillor Mofflin, Councillor Graham, Councillor Archibald, and against Councillors Sullivan, Lang and Lorver, and that's carried. All right. That's going to, except we're past 9 o'clock, but we have one more item, so I'm not going to move to extend the meeting. I think we'll just get it done. The working group information report's the only item we have remaining. I'll move the officer's recommendation. I'm sure Councillor Graham, you'd like to second it. And Councillor Graham has offered to nominate for the position on the LEMC, unless we have any other nominations. Okay. Excellent. We will add the name of Councillor Graham to that report, and I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour, and that's unanimous. Thank you. We have no urgent business, late items or confidential business, so I will declare the meeting closed at 11 minutes past 9. Thank you.